Flame met frost, and the chamber groaned. Each swing of the monster's molten hammer sent heat rolling across stone, the air boiling with every impact. Leon did not give ground. He moved like a shadow that learned to cut. Fluid, precise, out of reach. His daggers flashed silver and blue. Ice hissed along their edges. Wind condensed to a razor sheath. Every deflection threw up steam, a white veil of scalding fog and shredded mana. This was no longer a brawl. It was an elemental duel, and Leon was edging it. Barely, but clearly. Each exchange burned the creature with its own fire and marked it with Leon's cold steel. Thin lines of glowing blood striped obsidian hide across shoulder, thigh, and rib. None fatal, all adding up. The wound stayed open. Leon's ice did not only cut. It clung. It crept under skin, slowed the flesh, choked regeneration. Every next movement cost the beast more. Leon watched everything. The twitch of a calf, the shift of a hip, the way flame thickened around a wrist before the hammer fell. Faster. Wind tightened around his frame, and his steps came lighter, cleaner. Sharper. Ice crept along his blades and turned edge into intent. Each clash carried him deeper. His breath turned to steam and vanished as it left his lips. Sweat flashed away the moment it formed. His heart stayed even. His grip did not shake. His mind narrowed to a point. You're strong. Not praise, a warning. To himself, this was not over. The pressure on the room had not peaked. The creature still had another layer. So did he. Leon slipped under a sweep, turned low, and opened the beast's abdomen. Another cut. Another hiss. He slid back before the backswing could smash his skull. Fire skimmed his cheek, and his wind shield screamed, but the cold held. The chamber shifted under his touch. Heat traded for mist. The floor turned slick with frost. The balance had changed. Leon knew it. The creature knew it. For the first time, it took a step back. Not to dodge. To think. To breathe. Leon exhaled. No grin. No taunt. He raised a dagger and moved in. The next cut would land clean. Wind shrieked along steel like a storm in a narrow alley. Frost climbed to the hilts, dense and pure, crystal bright. The blades stopped looking like knives. They looked like short swords carved out of winter. He reset his grip. Power. Precision. Purpose. The monster felt it too. One foot slid back an inch. A small admission. I see it. Then both of his hands cupped flame. Mana swelled. The chamber bent. A fireball gathered, small at first, then heavy. Heat with weight. A newborn sun. Leon's eyes narrowed. No. He broke forward. The air tore around him. His cloak ripped. One step, then flight. The sun was not finished, but the creature hurled it anyway. A half-made star screamed across the room. Leon did not flinch. He brought his blade down. Steel met fire and split it with a sound like ice under a wheel. The ball burst along the cut. Pressure screamed. Leon was already through. His cloak smoked. His skin hissed. His eyes locked on the throat. The hammer fell again. A burning guillotine from above. Leon turned under it and let wind pull him past the arc. The strike missed. His did not. The dagger drove for the neck. Shoulders set. Hips aligned. Every muscle lined up for the finish. Then nothing. His arm stopped. Mid-stroke. Inches short. The blade did not bite. It hung there, shuddering. Space felt thick, as if the air itself had hardened around the creature's neck. What? He pressed harder. His foot slid. His spine strained. The blade would not move. Ice on the edge cracked. The monster's hide under the jaw split in thin slivers from the sheer pressure, but the cut refused to go through. Leon's eyes widened. No! Flames swelled across the beast's chest. Leon pivoted out at once. Wind ripped under his boots and yanked him back as a wave of heat turned mist to ash and stone to glass where he had stood. He landed 10 paces out, breathing sharp, blade low, eyes locked. The creature straightened, jaw split, smoke trailing from wounds. It wiped glowing blood from its cheek and smiled. That wasn't a shield skill. Not fire, not steel. Something deeper. A layer of pressure that did not care about elements. The first taste of what this thing really was. Leon steadied his breath. The creature did not laugh. Silence held. They both knew the truth. This was far from done. He studied it. Obsidian chest heaving. steam curling from cracks. Cut still open. The flames duller than before. Its grip on the hammer tighter, but slower. Measured. It was tired. Not finished. Close. Leon did not smirk. He did not speak. The memory of that invisible grip still sat in his wrist like a bruise. He would not give a second chance. He did not need to. He was not aiming for the throat anymore. His gaze lifted. Higher. The ceiling vanished into smoke and heat. In that dark, a shape waited. A spear. Not a spear. A sentence. Pale, Arctic light ran along a shaft of compressed ice, smooth and flawless, ending in a point that promised ruin. Coils of wind circled it like hunting snakes and dragged the room's breath into a roaring spiral. This was not just mana. This was intent made solid. Leon had built it while he fought. Each step, each breath, a thread laid upward. Quiet, patient, ready. His eyes flashed silver. The creature noticed. It looked up. Something flickered across its face. Realization. Not prey. Predator. Leon raised a hand. The chamber trembled. Wind surged. Blue lit the spear. I said I would crush you like a bug, he murmured. Now I prove it. His voice dropped to steel. Stop it if you can. For the first time, the monster looked afraid. Its hollow gaze, once smug and cruel, widened as it stared upward at the spear Leon had called down. It was not a weapon anymore. It was a sentence. Leon saw the shift at once. A hitch in its breath. Stiff shoulders. A clenched jaw. Its aura frayed at the edges. Flame guttered with panic. You're scared. The thought tasted better than victory. Leon lowered his hand, silver eyes fixed on the beast like a general watching judgment fall. He thrust his palm forward. The sky answered. A streak of blinding blue tore down like divine wrath. Wind howled in its wake and warped the chamber, pulling heat and ash into a spiraling tail. The spear shrieked with raw, elemental pressure, leaving frozen mist in its path. The creature screamed, not from pain, not yet, from fury, terror, defiance. The sound rattled stone. Leon did not blink. He only watched. Scream all you want. That will not stop it. Obsidian veins lit like volcanic cracks. Lava rolled under its skin. The hammer in its grip flared into a second sun, molten lines racing through the head until it looked ready to burst. Stronger, Leon thought, and felt the cost of it without touching. The creature was overclocking its body, tearing past the limits it was built to survive. It knew it. It did it anyway. Too late. The spear was already there. The beast tried to slip aside and failed. Instinct hauled the burning hammer up for a last-ditch block. Spear met steel. Boom! Light and pressure slammed the room. Stone split. Wind screamed. Fire broke apart. For a heartbeat the hammer held. The weapon wailed. The monster roared. Mana crashed against mana. It was a lie. The spear kept going. It crushed the hammer like glass and drove straight through the creature's chest, then out the back. A jagged hole opened where a heart should have been. Blue ice and roaring wind blew the upper torso apart. What remained flew backward. The spear did not stop. It pinned the twitching halves to the floor and kept boring down until half its length buried in the earth, runes along the shaft pulsing with cold light. Silence fell. Then a deep shock wave rolled outward. Leon braced. A spiral of wind wrapped him in layered sheets. The blast hit toward his cloak, whipped his hair, slid his boots 2 steps across the fractured floor, and passed. Still that strong, even dead, he muttered. Ash drifted from the ceiling. Chips of molten obsidian fell like black snow. In the center, the spear stood like a monument. Ice crackled along it. Wind circled like a ring of guardians. The monster did not move. It cannot. Its upper body was gone. The skewered remains lay open like a split furnace, embers pulsing weakly around the wound. Leon studied it, breath steady, eyes hard. Shame about the hammer, he said softly. It had looked perfect, the kind of weapon that could level a wall and come with a legend. Now it was grit and twisted metal, steam rising from a cooling haft, fragments scattered like dead coals. Will look good on my back, he thought. You were probably high rank. Too bad. No use mourning melted loot. He walked to the corpse. Each step rang like a quiet drumbeat. He crouched by the ruined chest. The spear had nailed the body clean through, but part of the neck and lower torso remained, blackened and warped. Half a face clung to the skull, frozen in a silent scream, eyes wide with the last thing it felt. Terror. Leon let the satisfaction bloom and fade. That is for breaking every bone in my body. He stood, brushed dust from his palm, and went still. Manicore. His gaze snapped back to the ribs. Panic pricked. If the blast had shattered it, that would be a waste. No, no, no. He dropped to his knees and searched through the cavity and along the back, careful of the hot stone. There, a low glow under cracked flesh. He reached in and drew it free. It was massive, 3 times the size of the wolf cores he had taken. A perfect obsidian sphere veined with red and gold like trapped lava. It pulsed in his hand, heavy and alive. This will sell, he breathed and felt his shoulders loosen. But satisfaction could wait. 1 core was not enough. You had more. I can feel it. He took up a dagger. Wind wrapped the blade and turned it into a scalpel. He worked. Clean cuts. Steady hands. He peeled plating and muscle aside with patient precision. The wind-honed edge parted hardened hide like cloth. Blood hissed on cooling stone. Ash clung to his boots. Near the shattered chest, something glimmered. Not bone, not flesh. A stone, half fused in cooled magma. Leon narrowed his eyes and reached in. Smooth, warm, carved with tight, swirling runes that glowed under soot and blood. He lifted it. Ping. A blue panel flashed. You have acquired. Skill rune, King's Touch, epic rank. Leon blinked. What? His fingers closed around the stone. Breath hitched. A skill rune. Epic. His pulse quickened. Whatever this was, it was not common. And it was not.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
The last echoes of battle faded like breath against glass. Leon stood still, his boots planted in a circle of scorched stone. The air still trembled faintly from the aftershock of his final attack, but already the silence was returning, thick, absolute. He didn't move, didn't lower his guard. Frost still clung to parts of the chamber, spiderwebbing across melted black rock. Steam hissed softly from the cratered floor where his spear had struck. The monster's broken form lay just ahead, its upper half buried in cracked stone, body split and still glowing faintly with elemental residue. A quiet hum lingered in his bones. It wasn't fading. He exhaled through his nose and raised a hand, slow and steady. The space before him shimmered, his storage activating. The air folded slightly inward as if it knew where to go. With a simple thought, the monster's corpse and the shattered fragments of its hammer vanished in a golden light. Even in ruins, the weapon had weight. Heat. History. He could still feel the echo of its strength as it disappeared into his pocket dimension. Maybe later, he'd try to reconstruct it. Maybe not. He could sell it for material or could found any other use of it. Right now it was just done. Leon rotated his wrist, flexing his fingers. No trembling. No ache. He should have been drained. That spear, wind wrapped around condensed ice, launched with full force, had been more than anything he'd ever cast before. It had cracked stone, disrupted magic, ended a fight against something that had nearly crushed him. And yet, he wasn't empty, not even close. His mana hadn't just started recovering quickly. It had never dropped below a threshold he could feel. A quarter? The realization crept in as sensation, not logic. There was no meter telling him how much mana remained, just the feeling in his limbs, the buzz in his core, the invisible pressure of power waiting quietly beneath his skin. I didn't even push close to the limit. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt curious. He lowered his hand and turned back toward the throne, its surface fractured, the stone beneath his feet still steaming faintly. The aura of the battlefield had begun to settle, but something shifted behind the platform. Where there had been nothing, now there was space. A narrow opening in the wall. Black stone pulled inward like a door that had never needed hinges. Leon's eyes narrowed slightly. He took a few steps forward, head tilted slightly. No wind here. No residual magic. The air felt still, not stale but preserved. The temperature dropped half a degree, cool enough to notice, but not enough to chill. The new hallway extended into shadow. The floor was smooth obsidian, veined with thin golden lines, and carved with runes that trailed like vines. Some glowed, faintly blue, pulsing every few seconds. He couldn't read them, but the rhythm reminded him of a heartbeat, slow and patient. He kept walking. The deeper he went, the more the atmosphere shifted. Not in danger, not in tension, but in age. Like this part of the dungeon hadn't been touched for centuries. Like it wasn't meant to be seen until now. The hum grew louder the farther he moved. Not sound, but sensation. A quiet vibration that lived somewhere between his ribs and his spine. And then light. Soft golden. It spilled from a wide, circular chamber ahead, brushing faint warmth against his face. He reached the archway, one hand resting lightly against the stone frame, and stepped through. His eyes adjusted quickly. The room was small, round, domed ceiling. The walls shimmered faintly with a natural glow, light diffused through polished stone. And at the center, a pedestal, and on it, a chest. Massive, rectangular, the kind of heavy, deliberate shape that spoke of permanence. Its corners were wrapped in gold bands, edges traced in silver filigree. Script lined the top in circular patterns, half faded, half radiant. The glyphs weren't just decoration. They pulsed once, faint and alive. Leon stopped 3 steps away. He didn't speak, didn't blink. The feeling in his chest tightened, not from threat, from weight. It didn't feel like a reward. It felt like recognition. He crouched slowly, not taking his eyes off the chest, and extended a whisper of wind, fine as thread, sharp as a knife's edge. The current drifted forward, brushed against the latch, and nudged. Click. No spark. No curse. No rejection. Just a simple sound. Accepted. He guided the wind upward, wrapping around the lid. Lifted. Slowly. The lid creaked as it slowly started to reveal the inside. Light spilled through the crack. Muted, amber gold. When it finally opened far enough to see inside, Leon leaned forward. Then froze. He stared. No movement. No breath. Just him. And platinum. Rows. Bars. Stacked side by side. Each one stamped and flawless. Arranged so neatly, it looked ceremonial. He didn't speak for several seconds, realizing what he had just found. Then quietly, "That's platinum." The words came out flat. He blinked. Bars of it. No one answered, obviously. Not coins. Bars. Literal bars. Dozens. No, hundreds. Maybe more. He squinted. Leaned in. Recounted. Nope. Still there. Huh. He rocked back on his heels. Still crouched. Still staring. No expression. Then softly. "I'm rich." Pause. Head tilt. Wait. "No. I'm wealthy." His voice had gained depth. Confusion replaced by recognition. "Filthy, catastrophic. You make the merchant faint just by walking in wealthy." He let out a quiet, stunned laugh and ran a hand through his hair. He remembered Seraphine once showing him a single platinum coin, polished and locked in a velvet-lined case. She'd said it was worth over 100 gold. One coin. One. He had what? He didn't want to count. His stomach turned at the thought of math. This is wrong. But his grin widened anyway. Not smug. Not greedy. Just, what the hell is my life? He reached out and gently lowered the lid. The creak was softer this time, like the chest understood. He rested a hand on top. "You're mine now," he murmured. "Stay quiet, stay pretty, and don't start glowing randomly." A flick of his wrist, and the chest vanished into storage. The noise it made wasn't dramatic, but it felt expensive to him. Leon stood. Let the silence settle again. He didn't need to celebrate. The win was enough. His steps took him around the pedestal where the far wall looked collapsed, until he got closer. A tunnel. Sloping. Familiar, not the same, as before it reminded the before. He stopped at the edge. tilted his head down. A shoot. His fingers curled once. Images flickered, of falling, of pain, of that chamber with the throne and the monster that broke his bones like dry twigs. He took one breath. Not deep, not steady, just real. I'm not the same anymore. The words came quietly. He crouched again, planted his palms on his thighs. Wind gathered faintly around his boots, not flaring, just ready. He looked into the tunnel, didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, then pushed off and dropped in, without any panic and scream. He glided smooth through the tunnel. He descended into the dark, shoulders squared, eyes open. Whatever waited at the bottom, he'd deal with it. Leon landed gracefully on solid stone, both feet flat, his posture controlled and deliberate. No stumble, no awkward crash, just a clean, silent descent, perfectly balanced. He straightened slowly, dusting off his cloak with practiced movements as his eyes adjusted carefully to the dim new surroundings. The tunnel had expelled him into another chamber, but this one felt starkly different. No jagged throne dominated the room. There was no lingering scent of burnt mana, no ashes scattered around. The air was noticeably cooler here, quieter, carrying an unnatural stillness that settled on his skin like a delicate veil. Still inside the dungeon, but somewhere else entirely. His gaze methodically swept across the chamber, taking in every detail. Dim crystals embedded within the ceiling pulsed rhythmically with a slow, faint blue glow, casting soft, shifting shadows upon the smooth, untouched floor. The walls were bare and unscarred, a stark contrast to the battle-torn chamber he'd recently departed. In the distance, soft echoes of water droplets reverberated gently, whispers resonating through stone corridors with a quiet, haunting melody. There were no signs of previous battles here. No mangled corpses, no scorch marks, no scars of unleashed mana. Only a deep, profound silence. And beneath that silence, Leon could sense a lingering pressure, subtle but unmistakable, patiently waiting. Leon exhaled slowly, the sound of his breath audible in the encompassing stillness, and began walking forward. His boots clicked softly, the gentle echo punctuating each step. So, that thing wasn't the final boss after all. He knew he should have felt dread, fear perhaps. But instead, what rose up inside him was an entirely different sensation. Excitement. Anticipation. If that creature was just the gatekeeper, then what the hell's waiting at the top? His heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but from a potent blend of thrill and curiosity. Deep within his soul, the part of him that once starved in shadowed alleys, the part that once sold bowls of soup merely to survive, now craved this challenge, hungered for it. Yet beneath that excitement hummed a chord of caution. Strength, Leon knew well, did not mean immortality. He vividly remembered the near-death experience just days prior. How close he'd come to total defeat. The agony of broken bones, bleeding wounds, and sheer powerlessness haunted his memories. He clenched his fists at his sides, feeling determination solidify within his chest. Then slowly, confidently, he smiled. But that was before the orb, before the merging. Now, he rolled his shoulders deliberately, savoring the sensation of wind swirling eagerly around his limbs in response, coiled and ready to obey. The air itself felt richer here, the mana answering his call quicker, more vibrantly. He could feel it pulsing through him, strong and sure like a second heartbeat, immeasurable in its depth. And most absurd of all, he was still completely full. I didn't get a single wound in that last fight. Didn't even need healing. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully, imagining for a moment what might happen if he truly unleashed everything he now possessed. If he pushed his newfound limits even slightly further. If I used my full mana, would there even be a dungeon left? The thought drew a quiet chuckle from him, dry, calculating, confident. This wasn't arrogance, Leon knew. This was clarity, precise and well-earned, born through trials, bloodshed, pain, and victory. Whatever boss lay hidden deeper within this dungeon, he was more than ready to face it. Adjusting his grip on his trusted daggers, he pressed onward. Let's find out what's behind the next door. Leon moved silently through increasingly narrow, darker corridors. The dungeon seemed almost aware, tightening around him, pressing closer as though attempting to halt his advance. But couldn't stop him. Not anymore. Not with a newfound power humming beneath his skin, waiting eagerly to be unleashed. Eventually, he reached another large chamber, just beyond a cracked stone archway, and paused abruptly at the sight before him. There, lying at the center of the room, was a scene plucked directly from recent memory. The red-horned wolf, massive, heavily scarred, still radiating heat like embers left smoldering. Around it were 5 smaller wolves, lean, their fur streaked with vivid blue lightning. Exactly like those that had previously hunted him down. Leon halted cautiously, eyes narrowing as he scanned the room carefully. The large red wolf remained curled, breathing heavily, clearly not yet fully recovered from their previous confrontation. But the smaller wolves stood instantly at his arrival, electricity crackling through their fur, snarling fiercely as they moved protectively around their wounded alpha. Leon felt amusement curl his lips upward. Oh, but doing this again? Unhidden, he stepped openly into the chamber, silver eyes glowing softly in the dim blue light. His footsteps echoed gently, the sound drawing all wolfish gazes directly to him. They recognized him immediately. Snarls deepened, eyes narrowed dangerously, claws scraped anxiously against the stone floor. With a single unspoken signal, the wolves charged. Leon didn't flinch. Instead, slowly, deliberately, he lifted his hand and accessed his inventory. The familiar daggers shimmered briefly and vanished. In their place materialized a spear crafted from condensed ice and bound by swirling wind. The very spear that had shattered molten fury like fragile porcelain. Leon caught it effortlessly, the weapon's weight comfortably familiar. The wind coiled tighter around the shaft, frost glittering vividly like stardust trapped within crystal. Instantly, the room fell deathly silent. The wolves froze mid-charge, momentum evaporating in an instant. Their claws scraped against stone as they hastily backpedaled, ears flattened, tails tucked submissively. Their glowing blue eyes fixed upon the spear, primal terror reflected starkly in their wary expressions. Leon tilted his head slightly. Yeah, I'd run too. He let the spear's base gently tap the stone floor, a quiet, resonant chime echoing outward. The blue wolves flinched visibly but held their ground, eyes fixed upon the deadly weapon. And the red-horned alpha? It remained curled, silent and watchful, cautious. Leon exhaled slowly, shifting his grip, feeling power surge within. This time, I'm not the one running. And this score, long overdue for a rewrite. He twirled the spear, clicking his tongue thoughtfully. The wind swirling around its shaft had dulled slightly from storage, but he could remedy that easily. With a mere flick of will, he summoned additional wind, coiling powerfully from his body. It condensed swiftly along the frozen weapon, regaining its deadly hum, low, menacing, intensifying with each passing heartbeat. Leon locked onto the red beast, mana surging visibly through his veins, glowing faintly beneath his skin. The spear vibrated eagerly in his grasp, wind roaring along its blade, a war anthem heralding imminent battle. Then, unexpectedly, the alpha wolf rose shakily, limbs trembling faintly. Leon tensed, preparing for confrontation. But the wolf didn't charge. It turned abruptly, fleeing desperately toward the chamber's far exit, claws frantically scraping against stone. Caught momentarily off guard, Leon blinked once, then chuckled darkly. Oh, no, you don't. You don't get to run. Not this time. Gathering strength into his right arm, mana pulsed powerfully, enhancing muscles and bones, energy blazing beneath his skin. Leon coiled back, focusing intently, then hurled the spear with devastating force. It roared deafeningly through the air, striking true, detonating spectacularly in a blinding storm of ice and wind. When the dust settled, the wolf lay pinned, defeated, unmoving. Leon straightened calmly, exhaling slowly. He had conquered fear, reversed roles from prey to predator. Now, eyes forward, he moved confidently ahead, steadily toward the dungeon's final confrontation. The spear flew like a comet. A streak of howling wind and shimmering ice tore across the dungeon corridor, moving so fast it left afterimages in the air. The red wolf turned its head mid-sprint, sensing the danger far too late. It tried to dodge. Fate had already chosen its end. Crack! The spear slammed straight through the wolf's side, tearing a gaping hole clean through its body. Ribs shattered, flesh split, blood erupted in a violent arc, and the beast didn't even have time to scream. It dropped mid-step, dead before it hit the ground. The spear kept going, trailing frost and force, until it collided with the far wall with a deafening boom, sending a shockwave pulsing through the chamber. The 5 blue wolves trailing behind their alpha stumbled, legs buckling, balance shattered. They skidded to halts, ears pinned back, eyes wide with primal terror. Leon exhaled softly, eyes fixed on the corpse. One down. No mercy. Leon was already moving. Before the blue wolves could recover from a shockwave, his figure blurred. Motionless one instant, unstoppable the next. Wind screamed around him as he activated his adept rank body enhancement, channeling condensed air across his limbs like armor wrought from a storm. He didn't draw his daggers. He didn't need to. Around his fists, wind compressed tighter and tighter, becoming visible, solid, like gauntlets of raw force humming with lethal energy. They shimmered faintly, razor-thin spirals coiled into dense impact cores. He hit the first wolf mid-leap. The punch didn't just land, it detonated. Crack! WHUD. Bone shattered. Flesh burst. The beast's body was flung sideways like a rag doll, dead before it even touched the ground. Leon didn't pause. He was already on the second, then the third. Each strike was precise, brutal, and final. The wind around his fists shrieked with every blow, rupturing skulls and snapping spines in a single hit. By the time he stopped moving, all 5 wolves had collapsed, slain without weapons. No effort, no mercy. Leon turned toward the shattered wall where his ice spear had embedded itself. Despite the explosive impact it had caused, ripping through flesh, cracking stone, and scattering mana like a shockwave, it was still there, still whole, still perfect. He blinked. You've got to be kidding me. The spear hadn't cracked, chipped, or even dulled. Its surface shimmered faintly, the ice gleaming like polished crystal, smooth and pristine. A weapon born of magic, pressure, and will, and somehow it had endured all of it. He stepped forward, gripped the shaft, and with a firm pull, tore it free from the wall. The stone groaned. Dust fell. The weapon remained untouched. Leon gave a small nod, the corner of his mouth twitching. You're coming with me again. With a thought, he stored the spear back into his inventory, its presence like a quiet promise waiting for the next execution. Leon moved steadily through the winding paths of the dungeon, calm and focused. His steps echoed lightly, his hands never resting. Every monster he felled, he took the time to retrieve its mana core, storing them in a neat mental tally. When he came across larger beasts, especially the bigger wolves, he stored their entire corpses. The rest he left behind. He didn't keep track at first. Somewhere along the way, he lost count. How many had it been? 30? 40? More? At some point, the numbers blurred into motion. Movement, breath, instinct. And now, as he stepped into a long corridor, he slowed. Because everything about this place, the shift in air, the stillness, the hum in the stone, told him one thing. The boss was ahead. It wasn't just instinct. The space itself announced it. The kind of ominous silence that came before something massive. Dangerous. His heart beat a little faster, not in fear but anticipation. He was ready. Something else tugged at his thoughts. He glanced to the side, and his expression shifted, just slightly. Along the way here, he had seen them. Corpses. Not human. Not fresh either. Small wolves. The same blue-tinged lightning beasts he had fought before. 2 of them, sprawled in different corners, cut down by something sharp. Clean. Precise. I didn't do that, he thought, eyes narrowing. They weren't burned, weren't frozen. There were no signs of stray elemental backlash, no crackling residue of lightning, no lingering frostbite, no scorched stone or frozen blood. And yet, something lingered, a trace of some other element, subtle, unfamiliar, almost like static under his skin. He couldn't identify it. Not yet. Just clean kills. Which meant he wasn't the only one here. That realization settled in his mind like a quiet weight. Not fear, a new calculation. Because if someone else had gotten through this death trap of a dungeon, then the real question wasn't whether the boss was still ahead. It was who would reach it first. Leon quickened his pace. He didn't activate the cloak's invisibility. Not this time. Too risky. If someone was ahead, or worse, watching, he didn't want to be caught mid-transition between seen and unseen. Especially not while using an artifact-level treasure. That kind of thing drew eyes. Questions. Greed. And right now, he was still only wearing his underwear beneath the cloak. It wasn't about modesty anymore. His old armor and clothes didn't fit his new body. His frame had changed too much after the orb's fusion. Too tall, too lean, too different. So the cloak stayed on. Not as a relic, not as a defense, just as clothing. His only layer. The hallway narrowed as he moved, its carved stone lit by soft, blue crystals embedded in the walls. The quiet hum of mana ran beneath his boots, steady and faint like dungeon breath. Then he saw it. A massive gate at the end of the corridor. At least 3 times its height, sealed shut, with ancient carvings winding across its surface like a map of veins. It radiated past. That wasn't the first thing he noticed, because sitting at the base of the gate was a person, draped in a dark cloak, hood pulled low, posture casual yet still. They were seated on the cold stone, back against the gate, one arm resting on their knees. Leon stopped a few paces short, silent, alert. Well, looks like I'm not alone after all. And he didn't know yet whether that was good news or a problem. Leon didn't rush. His steps were quiet, measured, deliberate, more out of instinct than caution. He didn't need to see the person's face to know what this meant. Someone had made it to the final gate. I thought I would be only one to reach here. That thought burned sharper than he expected. This wasn't about pride or ego. It was about opportunity. The boss room was more than just a final fight. It was a threshold. And defeating the boss alone could dramatically increase his chances of awakening a rarer, stronger class. That was the whole point of the trial dungeon. Effort, risk, reward. If he shared that room now, he clenched his jaw lightly. No, I'm not splitting this. He stepped closer, stopping a few meters away from the figure at the gate. The person shifted slightly, head turning, body adjusting, acknowledging his presence without speaking. Their cloak was thick, worn, but high quality, the kind issued to trained adventurers. A simple, emotionless mask covered their face, obscuring all expression. Leon studied them carefully. Their posture was relaxed, not lazy. Balanced, resting, ready. Then he noticed something else. Her stature. Lean, compact. Shoulders slightly narrower than his. The angle of her wrists, the way her legs crossed. Details most people wouldn't catch. But he'd trained under Seraphine, and Seraphine didn't let small details slide. She's a girl. That much was clear now. Everything else? Still a mystery. Leon kept his hands at his sides, not drawing his weapons, not turning his back either. Not yet. Not until he knew why she was here, and whether she planned to stand in his way. The silence was thick. Leon stood at the far end of the wide corridor, his eyes locked on the cloaked figure sitting at the entrance to the gate. The corridor behind him was quiet. No monsters, no traps, just the residual hum of mana in the walls. But up ahead, that presence, it was different. He took a few slow steps forward, stopping about 10 meters away from the figure. The girl didn't move. Neither did he. For a long moment, the two simply stared at each other, wordless, unmoving. It wasn't quite tension, but there was caution in the air. Mutual assessment. The kind you do when you're not sure if the other person is going to greet you or stab you. Leon tilted his head slightly. She was wearing a black cloak, hood up, face hidden behind a silver half-mask etched with faint lines. Her posture looked calm, but then he saw it. Her right hand was pressed tightly to her side, and below it blood, dark, dried, and slowly dripping faintly. The floor beneath her was marked with faint stains, like she'd been there for a while. Wounded, bleeding. She's hurt, Leon thought, eyes narrowing, but not collapsed. She's alert. Then she spoke. Don't even think about it, she said, voice cool and steady despite the pain. If you try anything, I'll end you, injured or not. Leon narrowed his eyes, a bit surprised at the hostility. Then he realized something else. Her eyes had drifted slightly toward the edge of his cloak. Right? The cloak only reached just above his knees. He had no shirt, no armor, and was very much still just in his underwear. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Right. This again. One day I'll fight monsters fully clothed. He remained motionless, silent. He just waited. Across from him, the girl frowned slightly behind her mask, though he couldn't see it. Her thoughts were racing. He's seriously walking around like that? Just a cloak and underwear? What kind of lunatic is this? She tightened her grip on her side. And that body. He's lean, muscles like a trained duelist. No wasted movement. Even standing still, he looks balanced, centered. Too dangerous to ignore. And he looks, what? 15. Her gaze moved to his eyes, those bright, unnatural eyes. They held her still. What kind of eyes are those? Across? No, it's more than that. There's color. All of it. Every color. It looked a beautiful piece of glass had shattered magnificently in those eyes. Her eyes darted away from him, trying to clear her head. And those features. He's actually really handsome. Almost too handsome, but undeniably boyish. Cute, in the kind of way that sneaks up on you and ruins your guard. No, focus. He's a stranger nonetheless. Half-naked, glowing-eyed, probably insane. Stay alert. Leon raised an eyebrow, reading her body language. She was trying hard not to lean too heavily on her wounded side. Poised to fight, undeterred. He said nothing. Not yet. Instead, he slowly folded his arms across his chest, standing tall, but non-threatening. He didn't want to fight her. Not unless she gave him a reason. And, judging by her breathing and the faint tension in her shoulders, she was still deciding whether or not he already had. Leon finally broke the silence. So, he said calmly, "You gonna tell me who you are? Where you came from? And how you ended up bleeding out in front of Boss Gate?" His voice wasn't aggressive, just direct. Curious. He didn't need her whole life story, but he wanted the facts. This wasn't a safe place to play guesswork. The girl didn't respond. Her eyes, just barely visible beneath the mask, narrowed slightly. Her body tensed, but she stayed silent. Leon sighed. Great. The quiet, wounded, mysterious type. Of course. He tilted his head slightly, watching her. No name? No reason? You sure you're not the dungeon boss yourself? She remained silent. A small grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. Ah, I get it now. It's a secret. He gave a short, amused breath. Well, I'm afraid I'm not a fan of secrets. Before the girl could even blink, he vanished. A flicker of wind, a flash of motion, and before her hand could reach for her weapon, he was back in the same spot. Mask and hood gone. Now his left hand. The girl flinched, startled, wide-eyed. Her hand shot up toward her now bare face, but it was too late. Her identity was exposed. Leon studied her for a moment, then let out a thoughtful exhale. Much better, he said simply. Nothing to hide now. Her blonde hair spilled over her shoulders, long and silk-fine. Pale skin, flushed from stress. Light gold eyes, sharp, wary, intelligent. And even with the scowl forming on her face, she carried herself with the poise of someone who wasn't used to being looked down on. Definitely noble, Leon thought, and probably used to command, but not used to losing. Her breathing quickened, not from fear, but from irritation. She glared at him, lips pressed thin. Leon kept his expression calm. If she was going to explode at him for that, let her. He had the answers now, just not in words. Her face told him more than she ever would have said aloud. Leora's jaw clenched as she stared at the boy who now stood casually, holding her mask like trophies. She kept her silence. But inside, she was furious. He unmasked me. Just like that. I didn't even see him move. She kept her expression neutral, schooling her face into a calm glare, but her thoughts churned with irritation. Silver-white hair, those eyes, and not a single scratch on him. No wounds, no fatigue. Who the hell is this boy? It wasn't just his strength that unsettled her. It was the ease, the quiet confidence, the complete lack of fear. He hadn't flinched once. Meanwhile, she'd barely escaped the larger monster earlier. She'd fought off the smaller blue wolves on her path here, but not without cost. Two of them had ambushed her at once, tearing into her side before she managed to kill them. She nearly died. She bled. And yet, he looked like he had just taken a walk through the park. Leora's gaze flicked over him again, lips twitching with restraint. Definitely a noble. No commoner carries himself like that. I'll find out who he is once I get out of here. She shifted slightly, ignoring the fresh sting in her ribs. But that strength, it's on a different level. She said nothing, but her silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Leora's fingers curled slightly against her side, pressing where the bandage beneath her cloak soaked crimson. The pain was manageable, dull now, but her pride stung far worse. She'd trained for years, polished her swordsmanship, studied tactics, honed her spells in secret. She'd thought she was talented, elite even, but now, her eyes drifted back to the silver-haired boy who stood like the dungeon was his courtyard. He had removed her mask before she even blinked. That speed. Her heart sank with the realization. He's 15. 15 and already this strong. What have I been doing? She bit the inside of her cheek, steadying herself. A child, stronger than me at 18. Stronger than most I've seen. And worse, he wasn't even boasting. No arrogance. No gloating. Just that calm, unreadable expression. Those multicolored eyes with a white cross at their center, flickering with focus and ease. Like this wasn't even his limit. Leora felt her world stretch wider in that moment. A new horizon, and she wasn't sure if she admired him or resented him for it. The silence between them lingered, thick with tension and unspoken questions. Leon studied her carefully, her stance, her grip, her expression. She looked like a fierce tiger, focusing completely on his move, but not unreadable. A faint blush bloomed on her cheeks, betraying the guarded facade. He noticed immediately. There it is. A small grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. He couldn't resist. Why are you blushing while looking at me, huh? His voice dipped with faint amusement. I'm just a kid. Are you sure you're not the real predator here? Her eyes twitched, just barely, but it was enough to fuel him. He placed a hand on his chest and feigned a hurt expression, brows furrowed in wounded innocence. My clothes got destroyed during battle, you know. He gave a subtle spin for theatrical emphasis. This cloak is all I had left. I'm cold, vulnerable, and here you are. He let his voice fall into mock disappointment, gawking at me, really shameless. She didn't respond, but her entire posture stiffened. Have I been really behaving like a pervert? She questioned as his words felt genuine to her. Leon's grin widened slightly as he caught the way her gaze darted away for a second, only to snap back with a flare of irritation. Got her. He let the silence stretch a moment longer before exhaling softly and letting the teasing fade from his face. Even so, her control's impressive. Injured, but she hasn't backed down once. His expression shifted, eyes narrowing as he examined her stance more seriously. But the blush on her face? Still present. And Leon had to admit, he was starting to enjoy the mystery. Looking at the pink on her cheeks, Leon found it unexpectedly cute. Why does he look so amused? Gods, this is humiliating. But, judging by the boy's teasing and that maddening glint in his eyes, it certainly felt like she did. Just my luck. Embarrassment coiled in her chest, sharp and hot, made worse by how calm and composed he remained. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Now that her face was revealed, there was little point in hiding her identity any longer. Her hood stayed down. The silver mask lay by her side. She turned toward him fully, posture upright, gaze direct. I owe you an apology, she said, voice level, for showing such an impudent side earlier. and for misjudging you." Her eyes didn't waver. "I thought you were a threat. What if that had been your intent? I wouldn't still be breathing." He could have ended me in the time it takes to blink. The thought sat heavy, not in fear but acknowledgement. This silver-haired boy, barely 15 by appearance, was calm, confident, and terrifyingly fast. Not a scratch marked his body. No sweat, no fatigue. She had barely escaped the lesser monsters. He looked like he'd walked through them without effort. And now, he was smiling like they were just having casual conversation. She bowed her head slightly in genuine respect. "He's stronger than me. That much is clear." And now, she had no choice but to treat him as an equal, perhaps even a superior. Leon crossed his arms and made a show of considering it, his face adopting a mock-reluctant frown as if weighing the gravity of her apology. Then, with an exaggerated sigh, he nodded slowly. "Fine," he said, voice low but measured. "I accept your apology, I guess." He even tossed in a faint shrug for effect. Leora blinked, then lowered her head again, this time with more sincerity. "He's kinder than I expected." The earlier embarrassment still lingered, but something steadier settled in her chest now. Relief. And maybe even a flicker of gratitude. She raised her gaze again, expression softer. "My name is Leora," she said at last, voice clear. "Leora Vailwyn, from House Vailwyn." Leon stayed silent, attentive. She continued. "It's a small, noble house along the southeastern borderlands," she explained. "We defend against monster incursions from the ridge passes, loyal to the crown, but overlooked for years." Her eyes dimmed slightly. "This class awakening was my chance to gain something rare, something powerful enough to protect my people and raise our standing. But if I awakened openly, the central nobility would have taken me in or buried me quietly. That's why I came here under a false name, disguised." She looked aside, voice softening. "But I wasn't strong enough. Not alone." Blood still clung faintly to her torn side, and though her face remained composed, her posture betrayed the strain. Leon listened quietly, offering no interruption. His silver eyes, bright with layered color and a calm glow, never left her face. And though he said nothing yet, he understood. As her words tapered off, Leora lowered her gaze, this time not from shame, but from something heavier. The weight of honesty, of admitting failure aloud. Then, softly, "Please, don't tell anyone." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "About who I am, why I came here, about any of it." She met his eyes again, steady despite the faint tremble in her tone. "I know I've been reckless and impolite, but," she inhaled, "this means everything to me." Leon studied her a moment. There was no arrogance in her stance now, no pretense, just a young woman carrying her pride like a cracked shield. "She's sincere." That much he respected, and though he didn't say it aloud, he could also see the flicker of disappointment in her face, not for him, but for herself, for needing help, for not making it farther, for falling short of what she'd wanted to prove. He didn't try to comfort her. He knew that feeling too well. Some burdens had to be carried alone. But still, he spoke. "You made it this far on your own," he said, voice even. "That already makes you strong." He meant it. Leora's golden eyes widened a bit, startled, but not by the words. By the fact that they felt genuine. There was no smugness in his tone, no sarcasm, just quiet acknowledgement. And for some reason, that hit deeper than praise ever could. Leon tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk tugging at one corner of his mouth. Normally, I'd ask for gold in exchange for silence. It was the kind of thing someone in his position could easily demand. A secret kept for a price, especially from a noble. But then he glanced at her again, really looked, at the blood still seeping through her side, at the tension in her shoulders, the weariness in her posture. There was pride, yes, nobility in her bearing, but also a weight, like she'd been carrying too much for too long. And beyond that, he was a billionaire now. What the hell am I going to do with more gold? He let out a quiet breath. "Don't worry." His voice was calm, sincere. "I won't tell anyone." Leora blinked, eyes widening slightly in surprise. No conditions, no demands, no smug grin, just acceptance. Something about that made her chest tighten. She lowered her head slightly. "Thank you." Leon didn't reply right away. He simply turned his gaze toward the towering gate behind her. But one thought settled quietly in his chest. Not everything has to be a transaction. Leon's eyes drifted back to the towering gate at the end of the corridor. Massive, silent, and ancient, it loomed like the final page of a long, violent chapter. His curiosity had been sated. The strange girl, the corpses, the hidden truths of this dungeon. Most of it had revealed itself to him. But one thing remained. The boss. He could feel it now. Something heavy beyond the gate. Not just in terms of power, but presence. The weight of purpose. The anchor of the dungeon's existence. His hand shifted to his side. "I want to finish this. Not for glory. Not even for loot. Just to end it." He hadn't slept in over a day. His body felt light with mana, but heavy with time. The mental toll was creeping in, just enough for him to notice. It was time to leave this place behind. He turned to Leora. "I'm going," he said plainly, voice low but firm. "To kill the boss." Her eyes widened just for a second. The reaction was small, but clear, as if she hadn't expected someone to state it so casually. Or maybe she hadn't expected anyone to actually try. But then, just as quickly, she straightened. "Can I come?" Leon blinked. Leora looked up at him, expression neutral, but her tone honest. "I can still fight for a bit. Even like this." She rested a hand gently on her wounded side. The blood had dried there, dark and crusted, but it was clear she'd taken the hit hard. Still, her gaze didn't falter. He respected that. But, no. His answer came without hesitation. Leon shook his head slightly. "Stay here and rest. You've made it this far. No point pushing your luck now." For a moment, she looked conflicted, but only briefly. "All right." She exhaled, and this time the relief on her face wasn't subtle. Her shoulders slackened ever so slightly. She didn't want to die, not after coming this far. Not when her body had already been pushed past its edge. And yet, somewhere behind her composed expression, another emotion surfaced. Gratitude. "She thinks I refused out of kindness." That wasn't wrong, but it wasn't the whole truth either. He had no intention of sharing this final fight. Not the glory, not the loot, not the class advancement it would trigger. Still, if she wanted to see it as compassion, let her. As she nodded once more, Leon felt a small weight lift off his chest. Good. If she'd insisted, I'd have had to stop her, and that would have wasted time. He turned toward the gate and stepped forward. His hand pressed against its surface. Cool, cracked stone layered with dormant mana. A slow grind echoed through the corridor as the massive doors began to open, ancient gears shifting behind the walls with a tired groan. Before the gap widened enough to pass through, Leon paused. He turned his head slightly. "Stay safe, Leora," he said. Her eyes widened again. The use of her first name caught her off guard. Leon didn't wait for a reply. He stepped through the gate, disappearing into the shadows of the final room. Alone, focused, and unshaken. The gate closed behind him with a deep, echoing rumble. Leon took a slow step forward, his boots clicking softly on the obsidian floor. The chamber was vast, far larger than any other he'd seen in the dungeon. The air was different here. Thicker, charged. Mana clung to the walls like mist, making the air shimmer faintly. Cracks in the stone ceiling allowed narrow shafts of ethereal blue light to beam through, illuminating the arena-like space in solemn tones. He exhaled. This is it, the true end. Every sense in his body sharpened as he scanned the area. No movement yet, but something was definitely here. He could feel it. His pulse remained steady, not because he wasn't afraid, but because he was ready. Let's see what kind of beast they locked behind all this. Just then, a faint tremor passed beneath his feet. Dust rose from the far side of the chamber. A breath. Then, a second tremor. The stone gate sealed shut behind him with a groan of ancient weight, and silence blanketed the chamber ahead. Heavy, stale, and expectant. Leon took slow, measured steps into the boss room. Then he saw it. At the far end of the chamber stood a massive wolf, easily twice the size of any he'd encountered before. Its fur rippled with power, crimson flames licking across its left flank, and jagged bolts of blue lightning sparking along the right. Two enormous heads rested atop its broad shoulders, both bearing jaws lined with serrated fangs and eyes that shimmered like stormfire. Its presence was undeniable. The mana in the air thickened immediately. The beast hadn't even moved yet. So that's the boss. As if on cue, both heads stirred, eyes snapping open, luminous and full of ancient rage. The one crowned in fire let out a low growl that rumbled across the floor, while the lightning-headed one exhaled with a crackling hiss that sparked across the stone. Flames lit the air. Lightning danced across the ground. Yet, Leon narrowed his gaze. It's strong, no question. But even as he watched the elemental chaos whirl around the creature, something nagged at him. Still, only half the pressure that thing in the throne room gave off. The realization left a dull note of disappointment in his chest. He had expected something devastating, something equal to or worse than the obsidian monster that had shattered his bones and tested his soul. This wasn't it. Big, loud, mean, but not terrifying. Still, the beast wasn't idle. It advanced now, each clawed step cracking the floor beneath it. Both heads locked eyes on him, sizing him up. Leon's silver eyes gleamed. Don't bother, Mutt. You're not the hunter here. Without a word, he reached into his storage. A familiar weight settled into his palm. The eye spear, which was still holding up. It gleamed with residual runes, cold mist trailing from its tip like a divine relic pulled from a frozen shrine. Even cracked and half-spent, it pulsed with elemental hunger. As soon as the spear appeared, the wolf reacted. Both heads snarled in unison. Mana surged violently. It sensed the spear's danger, remembered perhaps what that kind of pressure meant. Then it charged. Fast. Faster than a creature that size should have been able to move. A storm of lightning bolts and fireballs erupted from both sides of its body, surging toward Leon in a spiral of destructive force. But Leon was already moving. With a flick of will, adept rank mana surged through his limbs. Wind curled around him like a loyal phantom. His form blurred, dancing between streaks of flame and arcs of voltage with perfect grace. His heart barely quickened. Too slow. Every strike missed by meters. Every blast scorched only air. And as he ran, he focused. Wind gathered, condensing around the shaft of the spear, wrapping it in layers of pressurized momentum. It began to hum, a low, sharp sound like the promise of judgment. The spear trembled in his hands. It wasn't as strong as it had been during the throne room fight, but it was still potent, still enough. Enough for this. Leon skidded to a halt, his feet grounded, his eyes locked onto the charging wolf. And then, he threw. The spear left his fingers like a meteor. Wind screamed. Air cracked apart behind it, and the beast had no time to react. Neither head could dodge. Neither claw could parry, because the moment the spear struck, it obliterated both heads in a single, deafening explosion. The twin necks burst like ruptured pipes of flesh and flame. The massive body convulsed once, then collapsed in a smoking heap before it even had the chance to cry out. And the spear didn't stop. It hurtled across the chamber and smashed into the far wall with a thunderous blast, embedding itself so deep the wall fractured outward in a web of shattered stone. A shock wave echoed back through the entire corridor. Outside, Leora flinched as dust trickled from the ceiling. Her wide eyes locked onto the door. What in the world was that, she thought. Back inside the chamber, Leon exhaled, calm, focused. His gaze lingered on the motionless corpse. Done, but he didn't relax. Not yet, because in dungeons like this, victory was only the beginning. Leon stood still for a moment, staring down at the collapsed corpse of the twin-headed wolf. Both of its necks were torn wide open, mangled beyond recognition, smoking from the lingering energy of his now broken spear. Even its limbs still twitched faintly as the last remnants of its mana dissipated into the air. He exhaled through his nose and moved forward. The battle was over. First, he reached down and searched the remains. His hand brushed over thick fur and scorched hide until he felt it, dense, pulsing faintly with residual energy. He dug carefully and pulled free a massive mana core, nearly the size of his palm and filled with streaks of fire and lightning. Not bad. He placed it in his inventory without ceremony. But he didn't stop there. This was a boss, and bosses had loot. He crouched again and started checking deeper, claws, chest cavity, organs already cooling from the kill. It didn't take long before his fingers brushed against something harder, smoother. A faint hum followed. Leon pulled it out slowly. A stone, pale gray, inscribed with faint, jagged runic markings etched in a dull yellow. The moment he held it, a message floated in the air. Skill rune, lightning bolt, common rank. He blinked once, then frowned. Seriously? A common ranked rune? After all that? It wasn't even the cool kind of disappointment. It was the quiet, mundane kind that just left a flat taste in the back of his throat. Still, he didn't toss it aside. A skill was a skill, and lightning, even if basic, had potential. He slipped the rune into his storage space alongside the beast's corpse and core. Then his eyes flicked to the back of the room, where the treasure chest waited. It wasn't as massive as the vault chest from before, but it had weight, design, presence, and more importantly, hope. Leon approached slowly, letting a thin weave of wind twist around his hand. Just in case. He circled it once. No traps, no runic wards. He guided the wind toward the latch, clicked it open, and then carefully lifted the lid. Inside, no platinum, no mountain of metal wealth. Instead, lying alone in the center, cushioned in velvet, a sheathed sword. Its scabbard was a deep charcoal gray, marked with elegant silver vines. The hilt was wrapped in dark leather, and the guard had a faint curve like a crescent moon. Leon reached in and lifted it carefully. It felt light, balanced. As he unsheathed the blade part way, a clean glint of steel caught the faint light. Sharp, beautiful, efficient. Then, as if on cue, item acquired, crescent fong, uncommon rank sword. He tilted his head. Not quite what he expected, but not bad either. Leon looked at the blade in his hands for a moment longer, then slid it back into the scabbard with a soft click. Looks like I won't need to buy a new weapon for a while. He turned slowly, surveying the chamber one last time. It was time to leave, but something told him his story inside this dungeon wasn't over just yet. The soft click of the sword sliding back into its sheath echoed faintly across the silent chamber. Leon stood still for a moment, his silver eyes scanning the room one last time. The twin-headed beast lay lifeless, the last challenge conquered, and the treasure claimed. Then, a sudden ripple shimmered in the air ahead. A circular, sky-blue portal unfurled just a few meters in front of him, its surface swirling gently like the surface of a lake, laced with runes that pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. Leon didn't move. Instead, he observed it calmly. So this is the exit. And elsewhere, in a corridor beyond the gate, another portal appeared. Leora, seated against the stone wall and still clutching her injured side, opened her eyes at the sudden glow. The light washed over her like a second sunrise, and for a moment she simply stared. Then she exhaled, deeply, her body slackened against the wall, her head tilting back in quiet relief. Thank the stars. I'm alive. But even as relief flooded her veins, dread lingered in the back of her mind. It hadn't even been a minute since the boy, the strange, half-naked, terrifyingly strong boy, entered the boss chamber. And it was over. Just like that. The explosion, the flash, the utter finality of it all. It had shaken her. What kind of monster is he? But she didn't dwell on it. With the portal shining beside her, she pulled herself upright and limped toward it, teeth gritted through the pain. She hesitated only for a moment, then stepped inside. Warmth enveloped her instantly. Everything changed. She was no longer in the dungeon. She stood in an ethereal space of endless stars, where time felt suspended and energy hummed with ancient intelligence. A quiet presence, massive and unknowable, welcomed her. A glowing prompt formed before her eyes. Lesser system link established. Her breath caught. Then, class awakening complete. Class rank B. Leora's eyes widened. Her pulse raced. She didn't even see the name of the class yet, but the rank alone made her heart skip. B rank. Not C, not D, but B. She'd done it, even with injuries, even without defeating the boss. She stepped forward into the light that beckoned her from beyond. And when she emerged, sunlight struck her face. Cool wind greeted her skin. She stood once more in the open clearing where the dungeon gate had been placed, the portal closing silently behind her like a dream, evaporating. Around her stood soldiers and robed mages bearing the kingdom's crest, watchful, quiet, alert. The lingering tension of the dungeon's earlier surge still hung in the air. But they weren't alone. Not far ahead, arms folded and expression cold, stood a woman clad in deep violet armor. Commander Seraphine Vale. Leora's eyes flicked to her in recognition, confused but respectful. Why is she still here? She didn't ask, of course. The answer was likely simple: damage control, dungeon instability, a potential break, a commander's duty. Leora exhaled again and looked around once more. But there was no sign of the little boy beside her. No silver hair, no strange eyes. She hadn't seen him enter with the other students, so to her he had simply vanished. Just another mystery, a terrifying one, but one she'd keep quietly to herself for now. Leora didn't get far. She took only a few careful steps toward the tree-line, hoping to quietly slip away before anyone noticed, before questions came. But that hope died instantly. A pair of guards stepped directly into her path, their halberds crossing before her like a gate. "Halt!" Leora froze. She looked up slowly, eyes narrowing beneath her hood. "What now?" "You emerged from the portal with such odds," the taller guard said sternly. "Identify yourself. What class did you awaken to? Who defeated the boss?" More voices joined in behind them. Other officials, mages, curious soldiers gathering nearby. A few scribes even lifted enchanted quills, ready to record anything she said. Leora's pulse quickened. She didn't want to answer. She didn't want attention. But escape wasn't an option now. So she schooled her face into neutrality, tilted her chin slightly, and replied, "I don't know who defeated the boss." There was a brief pause. The guards exchanged glances. "I was injured and resting near the gate." Leora continued, her voice even. "A portal opened in front of me, suddenly. I assumed the dungeon was cleared and stepped through. Technically true, just not the whole truth." She kept her tone flat, her gaze cool. Revealing too much now would only draw suspicion. And the last thing she needed was someone tracing her identity or questioning the boy, because she still didn't know what he was. Only that he was dangerous, strong, and that she owed him her life. Unnoticed by most, a third figure stood quietly nearby. Not a guard, not a mage. Commander Seraphine Vale. She had listened to every word. Her violet gaze remained fixed on Leora, sharp and unreadable. Inside, however, her mind was racing. So someone did survive, but not the boss, not alone. Her eyes shifted subtly toward the dungeon gate. Then Leon is still inside. Not a single flicker of doubt crossed her mind. If Leora had made it out injured and confused, then Leon, her precious disciple, was still deep in that trial. Still inside, likely to come out soon. Seraphine exhaled slowly. She didn't speak. She didn't step forward. But deep in her chest, a quiet hope sparked. "Come on, Leon." Leora handed over her fake identity card with a calm face. Her heart wasn't nearly as composed. She lied smoothly, D-rank class. A complete lie. But she had no choice. Revealing her true class here would bring more problems than it would solve. The last thing she needed was someone digging in her background while she was still vulnerable and unprepared. The guards didn't press, as it seemed she wasn't the one who killed the boss, just a weak bystander. One of the Kingdom Station mages stepped forward and healed her injuries with a flick of his staff. Warm light wrapped around her ribs, sealing the worst of the wounds. It took a bit of time. Even then it wasn't completely healed. "Look stable," the mage said. "Let her through." Leora bowed slightly, then walked, fast, without looking back. Just get out of here. She didn't stop until she was far away from the dungeon camp. Only then did she exhale. That boy, that silver-haired, cross-eyed boy with the quiet voice and impossible strength. He's still inside. It hadn't even been a full minute after he entered the boss room when her portal activated. She couldn't begin to guess what had happened in there. But she knew one thing clearly. If anyone can come out of that place alive, it's him. 10 minutes earlier, Leon stood silently inside the boss chamber, eyes sweeping across every corner. Nothing. He checked behind every stone wall, under the remains of the twin-headed beast, even the cracks in the floor. But unlike the throne room, there were no hidden vaults, no ancient doors, no divine runes etched beneath the blood. Just silence, and a faint aftershock of power still buzzing through the stone. Guess that's it then. The mana core was already stored. The corpse too. The skill rune he found, Lightning Bolt common, was disappointing, but it was still something. He'd added it to his inventory without much thought. And now, in front of him, the portal shimmered, the only way out. Before stepping in, Leon crouched beside a broken slab and reached into his inventory. Time to hide everything. He tore strips from his old clothes and wrapped them tightly around his lower face, forming a crude mask. Then tied his long silver hair into a tight bun and tucked it under the cloak's hood. The fabric draped over his shoulders, concealing as much as possible. He glanced down once. Still thin, still sharp, but no longer a half-starved boy from the slums. No one outside would recognize him. Not anymore. With that, he stepped into the portal. Light surged, space distorted. Then everything went quiet. He stood inside a blank space, white, endless, silent. It reminded him of Leora's description, a place between realities. A glowing message hovered in front of his eyes, connecting to the lesser system. Leon blinked, but then the text flickered, twitched, and cracked like glass. Another message replaced it. Error. Host is already connected to a superior system. Lesser system integration denied. Resuming under cosmic system protocols. Leon stared at the glowing words. Cosmic system again. He didn't fully understand it. But this wasn't the first time. This was the same thing that had triggered when he merged with the orb. When his gacha treasures first activated. He got message about connecting to cosmic system. The lesser system was for the world. But whatever he had was beyond it. His gaze narrowed faintly. Let's see what kind of awakening that gives me. The white void flickered. For a moment, Leon felt nothing. No weight, no gravity, no sound. Just silence. Then, a pulse of light shimmered ahead, and the system stirred. Not with calm, but with authority. Evaluation complete. Result: SSS+. Leon's brows lifted slightly. SSS+. He had expected something absurd. After what he'd been through, after merging with the orb, after killing that monster from a nightmare, he knew he wasn't just a fluke. But still, seeing it in text, his heart gave a quiet thud. Not fear, not pride, just confirmation. Guess I really broke the scale. A new screen bloomed into view. Dozens of options appeared before him, glowing, floating, moving as if they breathed with power. Each one pulsed with its own hue, like fragments of fate dangling in front of him. Choose your class. Elemental Paragon, SSS. Unique, the Keeper of the Dimensions, SSS. Ultra Rare, Lord of Flame and Thunder, SSS. Ultra Rare, Lord of Water and Ice, SSS. Ultra Rare, Lord of Time and Space, SSS. Ultra Rare, Lord of Light and Darkness, SSS. Ultra Rare, Lord of Wind and Earth, SSS. Ultra Rare, and others, stretching far beyond. Leon scanned through them, eyes moving with calm calculation. So that's how this works. Each name sounded like a prophecy. No swordsman, no mage, no generic nonsense. These are concepts, pillars, and only one stood out from the rest. Elemental Paragon. The tag next to it read unique. Just that one. Every other class, no matter how flashy, was merely ultra rare. Only one marked unique. Everything else is just close. He tilted his head slightly. So the system wants me to take it. And honestly, he could feel it too. The moment his eyes landed on the words Elemental Paragon, The space around him seemed to tighten, as if the choice was already fated. But Leon wasn't the type to jump at what was offered. Not without thinking. This isn't just picking a class. It's shaping what I'll become. And for someone already tied to something greater, already branded by a cosmic system, he had no intention of choosing lightly. Not this time. Not ever again. He stood in silence, evaluating, because what came next would decide everything. Leon didn't choose immediately. His eyes lingered on the class list, flicking between the options, one at the top and dozens below it. Lord of Steel and Storm, Lord of Fire and Wind, they all sound powerful. But they're bound, limited, each tied to just two elements. He glanced again at the one floating above the rest. Elemental Paragon, SSS, unique. Only one with that mark. Only one that fits what I've got. He focused on it. Just thinking about the name made something inside his chest stir. The core of mana embedded within him, his very center, reacted. Not violently, just like it recognized the name. So that's your vote too, huh? He exhaled once, slowly. His expression didn't shift. Makes sense. The other classes are strong, but they're likely bound to few elements. This one feels like mine. He didn't hesitate after that. Elemental Paragon, he said aloud. That's the one. And the system moved, quietly, as if it had simply been waiting for him to say it. Leon didn't get much time to admire the choice he'd made. The moment he confirmed Elemental Paragon, the space around him trembled. Faint cracks of light began spreading across the white void. Thin lines at first, then dozens, then hundreds. Right. I forgot these dungeons don't wait around once the boss is dead. The system hadn't even given him a proper notification. No ceremony, no grand flourish, just a flicker of acknowledgement, and now the whole realm was starting to fall apart. That meant he'd probably be sent out in a few seconds, whether he liked it or not. He looked down at his hand. No visible change yet. No wave of power or sudden rush. But the core inside his body, it pulsed once strong and steady. It responded the moment I picked that class. That was enough for now. Leon stood straight, letting the glow of the collapsing space swirl around him. Guess I'll check the details later. Light consumed his vision. Fast, bright, absolute. And just like that, the dungeon disappeared. The world returned in a flash of blinding white, then steadied beneath his feet. The ground was rough, familiar, real. Leon blinked slowly, eyes adjusting as the pressure in his chest eased just a bit. He was out. The scent of damp earth mixed with faint trails of mana in the air. Soldiers stood ahead in formation. Uniformed guards and mages posted along the perimeter of the class awakening site, their expressions unreadable. But beyond them, past the cordon, one figure stood apart. Commander Seraphine Vale. Long strands of purple hair trailed behind her, caught in the soft wind. Her face, always sharp with discipline and grace, was locked in place. Those amethyst eyes staring straight ahead, glowing beneath the overcast sky with chilling clarity. Leon's shoulders sagged slightly. His jaw loosened. I made it. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. But something tugged faintly at the edge of his heart. Relief, not just for surviving, but because she was there, waiting. No lectures, no drills, just presence, her quiet presence waiting for him. Then she vanished. A blur, a flicker of motion beyond normal eyes. Before his next breath, cold steel pressed against his neck. Her sword, bare and gleaming, hovered one twitch away from opening his throat. She hadn't hesitated. No words, no questions. Leon didn't flinch. This time, he could feel it, still couldn't see it. The way she moved, the shift in her weight, the mana drawn tight through her limbs. Her flash step wasn't a mystery to him anymore. It wasn't teleportation. It was skill, control, speed, and now he understood only a little. But she seemed much faster. Before he could speak, her voice slid through the air, cold and even, but edged with something sharper. Where did you get that cloak? Leon's eyes narrowed, just a fraction. The blade didn't shake. Her stance was perfect, but her aura boiled around her, rippling with grief, fury, and something deeply personal. Beneath the mask covering most of his face, Leon breathed in slowly. She thinks I'm wearing it because I killed him. Because Leon, the silver-haired boy who trained beside her, who laughed through pain, who endured 3 years in her shadow, didn't walk out of the dungeon. Instead, this masked figure appeared, silent, hidden, clad in the cloak of her disciple like a thief wearing stolen pride. She had waited for him, prayed for him. Now, she was ready to kill to know the truth. Leon stood still. He didn't reach for his weapons. He didn't plead. Around them, not a single guard stepped forward. The mages didn't blink. No one moved. To them, this was either a punishment or an execution. The dungeon had collapsed behind him, and the boy they remembered had not returned. In their eyes, this was Seraphine's burden, a consequence of letting a child enter a dungeon that never should have existed. Nobody voiced it aloud, but the blame was heavy in every glance. Leon slowly looked up. Even with his face concealed, his voice slipped through with calm weight. "I missed you." The sword didn't lower, but her fingers curled tight, and for the first time, Seraphine's breath faltered. Farther back, the watching soldiers tensed. They couldn't hear the words exchanged, but the image before them was striking. Commander veil, sword to a boy's throat, expression carved in stone. For what they could see, she hadn't even blinked. They assumed he was a thief, someone who'd stripped the cloak from a body inside, someone who thought they could walk away with it like a trophy. They had seen that cloak before on the boy who followed the commander like a shadow. That boy was small, proud, sharp-eyed. And now this one, taller, older, silent, had taken his place. They expected blood. But then Seraphine froze. Not fully, not outwardly, but inside, her mind was spiraling. That voice, the way he spoke, the rhythm, the spacing, the weight behind each syllable. That's him. She scanned him again. The posture, the shoulders, the silence behind the mask. His hair was bound, hidden, his aura masked, but she saw past it. He hadn't wanted to be recognized. He had thought this through. Carefully. Smart, she thought. But why does his body feel different, and how is so tall now? What happened inside? Her thoughts swirled, but her hand didn't tremble. She kept the act alive, blade firm at his neck. Then, with a practiced flick, she sheathed the sword. Without warning, she hoisted Leon over her shoulder. "You," she muttered, tone clipped and cold, "are coming with me." Leon didn't resist, not even a twitch. He had felt the flicker of recognition in her reaction, the softening in her eyes. That was all he needed. He twisted slightly on her shoulder, throwing his arms out dramatically. "Save me," he cried in mock terror. "I'm too young and beautiful to die like this." His feet kicked at the air. His voice carried just far enough. The guards blinked. A few shifted uneasily. Not one of them laughed. Seraphine didn't stop. She marched straight past the formation and stopped before the lead mages and command agents stationed nearby. Her eyes narrowed. Her voice dropped. "If a single word about what you saw here today leaves this place," she said, "I will personally come find you." She let the sentence hang, then scanned every face one by one. "I don't care who you serve. I don't care where you run. I will remember." The first mage swallowed hard. Another saluted. "M.I.M. Understood." "Not a word, Commander," a soldier barked, his uniform suddenly too tight around his throat. As she turned sharply away, Leon continued his performance. Arms floppy, voice exaggerated, eyes glinting beneath the shadow of his hood. He didn't look scared, but to the others, he was already dead. The commander didn't walk. She stormed. They reached the black carriage station just beyond the trees, its silver trim glinting faintly in the mist. Seraphine opened the door with one hand and dumped Leon inside with the same motion. Then she stepped in behind him and slammed it shut. "Take us back to the estate," she said. The driver's voice came immediately. "Yes, Commander." The carriage jerked into motion, wheels crunching over packed dirt. The woman driving was no ordinary attendant. She was Seraphine's shadow, her blade in courtrooms and battlefields alike. And she didn't look back, didn't speak, didn't ask. To her, the boy inside wasn't a guest. He was a corpse. Whether he had murdered Seraphine's disciple or scavenged his body, it didn't matter. The sentence would be the same. Inside, the carriage fell quiet. The windows fogged faintly from breath and tension. Seraphine sat opposite him, body still, expression unreadable. She hadn't spoken again. Her hands rested on her thighs, but the tightness in her fingers betrayed the storm inside. Leon didn't wait. He raised his arms and calmly undid the knot of the cloth mask. The fabric slipped away and pooled in his lap. Then he reached up and pulled down the hood. His silver-white hair fell into view, catching the sunlight. His face, older, sharper, but unmistakably his, turned toward her. And for the first time since he had stepped out of the dungeon, his eyes met hers. No more hiding. Behind a sarcastic facade, he whispered quietly. The air inside the carriage felt still, heavy with something unspoken. His quiet whisper was not heard by her, as it was meant to be. Leon sat quietly, his silver-white hair now loose, his hoodie pushed back, the makeshift mask on. His mystic eyes, marked by that radiant white cross in the center and encircled by a prism of shifting colors, met hers without fear. Seraphine Vale stared. Her breath caught for a heartbeat. He was right in front of her, alive. Changed, yes. Taller, stronger, older in a way that didn't make sense. His face no longer had the softness of a child, but the sharpened lines of a boy forced to grow too fast. And yet, those eyes, that quiet stare, that maddening calm, it was still him, still Leon. The next moment happened without a word. She surged forward, arms wrapping around him like a storm made flesh, and pulled him into a fierce, crushing hug. Her face pressed into his neck. She didn't say his name, didn't scold him, didn't ask questions. She just held him, as if making sure this time. Asterisk, asterisk, he wouldn't disappear, asterisk, asterisk. Leon blinked in surprise at first, then slowly let himself breathe. Her scent hadn't changed, cold steel, violet petals, and the faint burn of training oil. Her grip was just as strong. And her presence? That overwhelming command that used to make him stand straighter in fear. It felt like home now. He didn't pull away. He didn't make a sarcastic quip. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her back and held her. Tightly, as if this time, maybe he needed it more than she did. So, she really was that worried. He let out a slow exhale. Guess I really scared her. No words passed between them. None were needed. Seconds turned to minutes. And still, she didn't let go. Leon sat there, back against the cushioned seat, arms loosely around her, while Seraphine clung to him like she might lose him again if she so much as blinked. Her hold was firm, her breath warm against his shoulder, and her amethyst eyes, hidden from his view, were quietly wet. He didn't mind. Not really. But still, is she gonna hug me forever? He tilted his head slightly, expression unreadable. She's not even pretending to be composed anymore. And wasn't she the one who used to scold me for being too clingy in front of the staff? His voice came out low, dry, but not unkind. Master, how long are you going to keep me like this? There was a pause. Then, from somewhere against his collarbone, a muffled reply came out. Until I'm satisfied. He blinked. That's not a real answer. She sounded like a stubborn child refusing to share her favorite toy. Leon sighed softly, eyes drifting toward the covered carriage window. Well, I guess it's fine. Even if her arms were a bit too tight. Even if his shoulder was going a little numb. She had earned this. She probably thought I died in there. He let her be. Just this once. No teasing. No witty remarks. No questions about why her fingers were still digging into his back like he might vanish in a thin air again. He just sat quietly and let her hold on. Because deep down, even if he didn't say it, he was glad she hadn't changed. Not when it mattered most. Finally, after what had to be 10 full minutes, Seraphine let go. Reluctantly, Leon felt the weight lift from his chest as she pulled back, only to immediately shift seats and sit down beside him instead, close enough that her shoulder brushed his. She didn't say anything at first, just quietly wrapped both her arms around his right arm and leaned slightly into it. Seriously, is she planning to glue herself to me now? Not that he minded. Her presence was warm, familiar. The air felt lighter with her next to him. Only then, finally, did she speak. Leon, she said softly, How did your body change like this? He turned his head toward her slightly, listening. You were only about 5 feet tall before, she continued, almost pouting. You barely reached my stomach. Now look at you. Her hand lightly gripped his arm, as if checking again that it was real. You're at least 5'5" now. You're up to my chest. And your build is different. Your shoulders, your proportions. It's like you aged 3 or 4 years overnight. She hesitated. And your eyes. Leon blinked slowly. She leaned in slightly to get a better look, amethyst eyes narrowing in quiet awe. They were silver before, she whispered, but now. Her voice trailed off. He could feel her staring, like she was trying to memorize them. There's a white cross in the middle, she said. And the rest, it's not even one color. It's like all of them, every single one, shifting around each other like they're alive. Leon's breath caught for a moment. A white cross? All colors. He didn't know. He hadn't looked in a mirror since the merge. He'd felt the change in power, his body, his senses, but this? So even my eyes changed that much. He paused for a beat. Must have been from fusing with the orb. Makes sense. He accepted it with a calm breath, though a flicker of surprise still lingered beneath his skin. Then, casually, you done staring? Her arms didn't move. No. She hadn't taken her eyes off him. Not once. Leon could feel her stare drilling into his skin, unwavering and sharp like always. He sighed, knowing full well she wouldn't stop until she got her answers. Should have known this was coming. There's a reason, Master, he said, meeting her gaze directly. It's because of the class I awakened into. That's what caused the change. It wasn't the truth. Not entirely. But he couldn't tell her about the orb. Not yet. That part of his journey needed to stay sealed for now. Seraphine blinked once, then nodded. No suspicion, no doubt, only quiet trust. Of course, she believed him, but her curiosity wasn't satisfied just yet. So, what rank? She asked softly, her fingers still loosely clinging to his arm. Leon paused, pretending to think, then shrugged with practiced nonchalance. High enough to trigger this, he said. She didn't push further. Not out loud, anyway, but in her thoughts, she was clearly piecing things together. He was 5 feet tall just 3 days ago. Barely reached my stomach. Now he was nearly eye level with her collarbone. At least 5 feet 5 inches, maybe taller if he stood completely straight. His body had lengthened, sharpened, defined in a way no 10-year-old should be. And those eyes, they weren't silver anymore. They were something else entirely. A white cross etched in the center, surrounded by irises filled with countless shifting colors, like stardust trapped in glass. Even Seraphine had to admit that they were beautiful, hypnotic even, and maybe it was just the emotion from earlier, but for a moment, even she had gotten lost in them. She blinked the thought away. No, not like that. It's just his eyes. That's all. Still, she couldn't help but think. He's still cute, but now he's handsome too. Dangerous combination. If a noble girls see him now. Chaos. That's what it would be. Seraphine's hold on his arm tightened slightly. She wasn't ready to deal with that. Not yet. Seraphine hadn't looked away from his face even once. Her arm still curled around his, as if he might vanish the second she blinked. The warmth of her presence was oddly grounding, but also mildly suffocating. Leon sighed. She's not letting this go. He could already see the question forming in her eyes again, that flicker of intense curiosity barely masked by her usual calm. Sure enough. What class did you get? She asked, soft but persistent. It wasn't a demand, just a quiet need to know. As his master, as the person who had trained him, watched him grow, and perhaps most of all, believed in him long before anyone else did. He paused. A breath passed between them. Then he gave her a small smile, just enough to disarm, just enough to redirect. I awakened an A-rank class. There. Quick. Clean. Not too low. Not too high. Just believable enough. Seraphine blinked, staring at him for a long moment. A rank, she echoed, voice touched with disbelief. Leon nodded once, keeping his expression neutral, thinking to himself. I figure it's better this way. Less attention. Fewer questions. It's strong enough to stand out, but not enough to attract the wrong kind of people. Or the right kind, he added silently. Depending on how you see it. She went quiet. In their entire kingdom, there wasn't a single person known to hold a class above B rank. Even she, one of the most feared and respected figures in all the kingdom around them, had only ever reached that mark. And yet here he was, a boy she trained with her own hands, claiming an A-rank class like it was nothing. Her heart skipped a beat, but then she smiled. Her arm tightened around his slightly, and her tone softened. You really are special, Leon. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Leon didn't speak. He just let the moment pass, quiet and unchallenged. Because right now, a rank was more than enough. _______. Seraphine shifted slightly beside him, her expression soft but thoughtful. She seemed to hesitate for a second, then spoke. You know, she began, her tone light but meaningful. Now that you've awakened your class, I suppose it's fair if I tell you mine. Leon glanced at her, curious. She smiled faintly. My class is B rank. He blinked. Wait, what? I've never told anyone outside the military, she continued, gaze turning to the window. But yes, even among all the commanders, I'm one of the only B rank class holders in the entire kingdom. Leon's expression didn't shift, but inside, he felt a small thud of realization. So, A rank is actually above everyone else here. He'd aimed for subtle, understated, but apparently, he'd still overshot it. Maybe I should have said B rank. That would have been enough. He kept the thought to himself. Seraphine was watching him now, her eyes warm. And that's why, she said gently, you should be careful who you tell. From this moment on, just say you're B rank. Nothing more. Leon stilled. She didn't have to do this. Didn't have to help him cover his tracks. Didn't have to hand him a perfect excuse wrapped in quiet trust. But she had. He turned his head slightly, looking at her through the curtain of his tied hair. She was still gazing forward, arms loosely wrapped around his. So even now, you're protecting me. He didn't say thank you, but the look in his eyes softened, and deep inside, a quiet respect settled further into place. Seraphine had always been strong, but it was moments like these that made her irreplaceable. Leon leaned back, eyes flicking toward the ceiling of the carriage. The lesser system. I was supposed to be connected to it, right? Everyone else is. But then came the orb. The moment he'd merged with it, that strange notification appeared. Error. Connection override. And the cosmic system had replaced everything. He didn't even know how to use underscore it yet. What did it mean to be connected to something the world itself didn't seem to understand? He sighed softly. Not now. He knows Seraphine would know how to use lesser system. The cosmic system might be similar, so once he get home he would ask her. He did have some ideas too, but he was too exhausted right now. He could feel it, the bone-deep exhaustion creeping in. His body might have changed, but that didn't make him immune to fatigue. I'm gonna sleep, he murmured, glancing at the empty cushioned seat across from Seraphine. That one looks good enough. Wake me when we reach the mansion. If you have more questions, I'll answer them once we're home. Seraphine stilled for a moment. Home. Her chest tightened just a bit. That single word, said so casually, felt warmer than anything she'd heard all day. But instead of agreeing, she narrowed her eyes and held his arm tighter. No. Leon blinked, confused. No. She smirked. You're not sleeping over there. That seat's too cold. What? She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted her posture and gently tugged his arm. Rest here, she said. Use my lap as a pillow. It's softer. There was teasing in her voice, playful and smug. She half expected him to scoff or shoot back a snarky comment. Maybe even get flustered. Instead, okay. Her breath caught. Before she could even register it, Leon had moved, quiet, fluid, relaxed. His head rested gently on her lap, his arms tucked in, his eyes already closed. Wah! Her expression froze. She stared down at him, blinking, completely silent. Then, after a moment, her features softened. You really just said yes, she whispered. A small, stunned laugh escaped her lips as her hand slowly rose. She brushed back a strand of silver-white hair from his forehead. Those mystical eyes of his, crossed with light, blooming with color, were hidden now beneath his lashes. His breathing had already begun to steady. He was asleep, and her heart, once anxious and tormented, now only felt one thing: peace. She smiled quietly to herself and gently began to stroke his head. "Welcome home, Leon. Underscore, 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 underscore." Along the way in the journey to their home, Seraphine gazed down at him, her fingers still gently moving through his hair. Family. She had almost forgotten that word still meant anything. Since the day she'd stepped into the army, she'd cast off everything else. Name, lineage, emotions, all of it, left behind on the blood-soaked roads she marched through. The only thing she'd held onto was purpose. To climb, to grow, to become so strong that no one else would ever suffer the same kind of loss she had. That was all she lived for. Until now. Until him. Every time her hand moved through Leon's soft, silver-white hair, every time she felt the quiet weight of him resting against her, a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. Slow, steady, unfamiliar, like a frozen heart learning how to beat again. She looked at his peaceful, sleeping face and felt something settle deep inside her. This feels like family. She tightened her grip on him just slightly. Protective, present, and for the first time in years, the cold commander didn't feel alone. She felt whole. I didn't think someone like me could feel this again. But the boy resting on her lap had changed everything. And this time, she wasn't going to lose it. A soft white cover rested over Leon's body, placed there sometime during the night. Seraphine didn't like the way the cold touched his bare skin. He wasn't wearing much, after all, just a cloak and what was left of torn underlayers. So without a word, she had taken one of the thicker traveling linens and gently draped it over him. A quiet act, thoughtful, protective. She glanced at him again, still sleeping. Even now, in this calm morning light, she could hardly believe it. He had slept the entire journey back to the estate. Even when she herself had dozed off for a short while, tired from days of worry, tension, and the silent relief of his return, he hadn't stirred. And now, the golden hue of morning had begun to pour through the carriage curtains, casting long shadows across the polished wood interior. They had arrived. Seraphine opened the door. The estate grounds greeted them, peaceful and silent. Morning mist clung to the stone pathway as a few station knights bowed from a distance. She ignored them for now. Her attention was only on the boy beside her. Carefully, she moved to lift him, arms under his knees and back. But the moment she began to carry him bridal style, his silver-white lashes fluttered. His eyes opened. He didn't say a word, just blinked once, then let her carry him. She paused mid-step. He's awake? Leon didn't resist. He didn't protest. He simply laid still in her arms, watching the world go by with quiet curiosity. She could feel it. He was letting her do this, letting her fuss, and something about that made her heart ache in the best way. She carried him through the mansion doors. The staff rushed to greet them, wide-eyed and whispering, but a single glance from Seraphine silenced the room. They moved quickly, quietly. Finally, after reaching the second floor, she gently lowered him in front of his room's door. "You good now?" she asked, still not fully letting go of his shoulder. Leon straightened, adjusting the white cover still wrapped around him. Not the least bit tired, he replied casually, his voice clear. "I'm fine." Seraphine nodded, her amethyst eyes scanning his face once more just to be sure. "Good," she said. "Then take a long bath. I'll have new clothes sent to you in a bit." She didn't wait for a reply, only gave his hair a soft pat before turning toward her own quarters. But her steps were slower than usual, because her heart still hadn't stopped feeling warm. Leon stood in the hallway a moment longer, the warmth of the covers still draped around him, the scent of Seraphine's cloak faint in the air. He slowly stepped into his room and closed the door behind him. Only then did his thoughts catch up. Why did I let her carry me like that? It wasn't like him. Not the old him. Not the one who used to snap and squirm away the moment someone tried to treat him like a child. But this time, he hadn't moved, hadn't said anything. And now, thinking about it, there was only one answer. I know how much she cares. It wasn't just duty. It wasn't just training or obligation. It was more, deeper, genuine. She wasn't like his previous parents. The ones who tossed him a platinum card and disappeared for months. The ones who met him maybe 4 or 5 times a year, and even then, it was all surface smiles and hollow words. He didn't remember warm arms. He remembered Nanny, a woman hired to keep him clean, fed, and out of the way. That was his childhood. That was the version of family he knew. Until now, Leon looked down at his hands. They didn't shake anymore. They didn't fidget or curl or clench like they used to. Something had changed. So this is what it feels like to be cared for, to be carried not because he was weak, but because someone wanted to be treated like he mattered, and not just as a student, but as something more. He took a quiet breath. His master was warm, and this strange, unfamiliar feeling rising in his chest. It wasn't bad. Not at all. Leon stepped into the bath chamber and let the door click shut behind him. The moment his foot touched the warm stone, a soft mist wrapped around his legs, carrying the scent of calming herbs. The bath had already been prepared. No doubt Seraphine had seen to it. He didn't call for the maids like usual. Not this time. He didn't want them fussing over him. And more importantly, he wasn't ready for the flood of reactions his new appearance might cause. They'll recognize me. Eventually, even if he looked older, taller, sharper. His face still held enough of the old him that anyone who'd known him long enough would figure it out. But he'd rather let the commander handle that part. He sank slowly into the water, letting the heat draw the tension from his body. Muscles loosened, breath slowed. The lingering battle edge he'd carried since entering the dungeon finally dulled at the edges. It was peaceful. For a while he just sat there, soaking, thinking, not rushing a thing. Then, soft footsteps echoed outside the door. A quiet knock. Light creak. A maid entered, keeping her head respectfully down, carrying neatly folded clothes in her hands. She approached the rack near the wall, placed them down carefully. Then their eyes met. Just for a second. Her hands froze. A blush shot straight across her face like a streak of flame, and she bowed quickly, so fast it looked like she almost tripped on her exit. Leon blinked once. Right? He looked away, sighed faintly, and sank deeper into the bath. That reaction's going to be a problem. Leon slipped into the white shirt and black formal pants the maid had delivered. The fabric was soft, luxurious, clearly something Seraphine had arranged. It felt strange wearing such fine clothes after everything that had happened, but they fit him perfectly, as if tailored for the boy he had become. He didn't know how Seraphine got the perfect fit for even after the change in his body. She was just different. He gave himself a quick glance in the mirror. Silver white hair, still a bit damp from the bath. A pair of mystical eyes stared back, white cross at the center, surrounded by every shifting color imaginable. Still not used to these eyes, but I can't say they don't look cool. He adjusted the cuffs slightly, then turned and stepped into the corridor. The estate's halls stretched ahead, sunlight slanting through the high windows, footsteps muffled by velvet runners, familiar walls now feeling a little unfamiliar. Or maybe that was just him. He wasn't the same kid who used to trail behind Seraphine's stride. And the whispers began the moment he turned the corner. A pair of maids passed by behind him, failing spectacularly at subtlety. He has young Master Leon's cuteness, one whispered, but sharper, older, more handsome. Did you see his eyes? They are mesmerizing. I had never seen anything like it before. But he do remind me of young Master Leon. No, he's definitely older. Maybe a cousin? Or an older brother? I thought the same. Like, if young Master Leon had an older brother who was born from a romance novel. Leon kept walking, expression unreadable. But his thoughts? A romance novel, huh? More murmurs followed from around the corner, down the hall, behind the curtains. Every maid he passed either paused, gasped, or turned away too late to hide their stares. Nobody recognized him. Not yet. Not with his height, his voice, his face. So I'm handsome now and still cute. That's going to be a problem. He knew he still looked like a 15-year-old kid, only 1 year away from his age in the previous world. But mentally he was 19, but he considered himself quite a level-headed person despite his age. He exhaled lightly and straightened his posture, because right now, he had somewhere to be before she called for him. Seraphine's office. the place where all questions would be waiting, and maybe a few answers too. Leon stepped in front of Seraphine's office door. Polished oak, reinforced hinges, the same place where most of his major life changes had begun with a single knock. But before he could reach for the handle, the guard standing outside straightened. Kayla_. The woman's gaze flicked over him, once, sharply, and for a brief second, her eyes widened in disbelief. Just for a second. Then her expression reset, face turning crisp and neutral again. A trained soldier's mask. Still, Leon noticed the faint stiffness in her shoulders. She nodded politely and stepped aside. The commander is expecting you. He inclined his head, saying nothing, and moved to enter. But behind those calm words, Kayla's mind was racing. That hair, those eyes are different, but that walk, there's no mistake. She'd been one of the first to meet him, back when Seraphine returned from Grey Ridge with a malnourished, sarcastic slum rat wrapped in a cloak and smirking like he owned the world. She remembered the file. Orphan, no family, no records, just sharp eyes and sharper words. So who the hell was this tall, handsome boy with the same silver-white hair and that exact aura? It's Leon. It has to be. He looked different. No, transformed, but she didn't need proof. She'd spent months watching the commander obsess over his training, treating the boy like her own blood. And now here he was, alive, changed, and clearly not dead, which meant the commander hadn't lost him. This meant Kayla could stop bracing for grief, for fury, for silence that stretched for weeks. She exhaled quietly as the door clicked behind him. Good. She still has him. That was enough. Leon stepped into the office, his posture relaxed but alert. Across the room, Seraphine looked up from a document, her amethyst eyes locking onto his the moment the door closed. She had clearly just bathed and changed. Her usual formal attire was crisp, her hair pulled back in her usual elegant style. Professional, composed. But there was a softness in her gaze that hadn't been there months ago. Leon took the seat in front of her like it was second nature. No tension, no hesitation, just a quiet understanding between master and disciple. You look good, Seraphine said softly, studying him. You too, he replied with a small smirk, letting himself relax a little. Beautiful and dangerous. Your usual. She allowed a faint smile. He didn't wait for her to say it. You want to know about the dungeon? He offered, breaking the silence first. Seraphine rested her chin against her hand and shook her head gently. I'm not curious about the details, she said. If something important happens, you'll tell me when you're ready. Leon blinked once. She's giving me space? That's new. He nodded. All right, but she continued, what I am curious about is your class in more detail, and your elemental affinities. Leon folded his arms across his chest, but not defensively, more in thought. Seraphine leaned forward slightly, expression calm. I already know you're the only A-rank class holder in the entire kingdom. I've never seen it before, at least not from anyone native to Lower Domain. Lower Domain. She knows about the Lower Domain. He wanted to ask more about it, but he knew now was not the right time, though he still cluelessly mentioned. What's Lower Domain? Seraphine, hearing his question, responded with a serious expression. I'll tell you everything when the time is right, Leon. But right now, you're too weak to know about it. And don't talk about this to anyone. Leon nodded at her firm tone. He let that sink in. She changed the subject flawlessly. I also want to explain something I never told you before, she said. Children born from nobles or awakened individuals can use mana from birth. He tilted his head slightly. That was news. But, she added, the amount they can access is so small, it rarely grants them any real advantage. Only a few ever make something of it. I didn't mention it back then because, well, I didn't want to discourage you. Leon stayed quiet, listening, processing. I thought you were just an exceptionally determined kid, she said with a smile. I didn't expect you to become this. Then her tone shifted just slightly, more personal. I wasn't born a noble either, Leon. You know that. He nodded. I climbed to the top by force, sweat, and stubbornness. The kingdom didn't hand me anything. So believe me when I say, I know what it takes. And I know you can do the same. For a moment, Leon didn't reply. Then he looked at her, not as a commander, not as a noble, but as his mater Seraphine. I'll do more than that, he said quietly. I'll go further than anyone expects. Seraphine's smile returned, warmer this time. And though neither of them said it aloud, something passed between them in that moment. Pride, trust, and something deeper, a bond that had long since stopped being just about training. Leon leaned back slightly in the chair, resting his arms on the sides with a casual grace. Like I said earlier, it's a rank, he repeated innocently. But I'm keeping the class itself a secret for now. Seraphine didn't argue. She only raised an eyebrow and let it go. Good, Leon thought, keeping his expression light. I don't want to lie more than necessary. But she already knows about the rank. Better to just keep it vague now. However, he continued, I can tell you about my affinities. That got her attention. Her eyes sharpened instantly. Leon looked straight at her, relaxed but measured. Space, lightning, and ice. There was a beat of silence. Then Seraphine blinked slowly. 3, she asked, voice calm. But he could see the faint surprise ripple in her composure. Leon nodded. Yeah, I felt a natural pull toward those elements. Honestly, I felt a pull toward all elements. Space because of what I saw. That portal, that movement, that instinct to blink between places, it stayed with me. And besides, teleportation, pocket dimensions, and all that cool stuff I used to read about in novels, it always came from space magic. It's versatile, rare, dangerous, and it feels right. As for lightning, I figured I could use something fast and destructive. Plus, Master also had the same affinity. She would be happy to know this. Seraphine's lips curved slightly, and Leon felt good seeing her like that. That wasn't a lie either. Not really. I just thought it'd be nice if she saw a little bit of herself in me. Something to make her happy. And ice. Crowd control. Shields. Traps. It's flexible. Doesn't rely on brute strength. And it's effective against a lot of enemies. Also helps that I've already used it. Seraphine leaned back in her chair now, truly studying him. She wasn't smiling. She was stunned. You're sure? She asked. 3 affinities? He nodded again, confidently. No need to lie about this part. It's not a secret anymore, and she's already sensed some of it. Space, she murmured. I've only heard of one person with that affinity in my life, and it wasn't from lower domain. That's considered legendary. Leon didn't speak. He simply met her gaze. She narrowed her eyes slightly, but there was no suspicion in them. Only curiosity. And something else. Pride. You really are something, she said softly. He looked away for a second, hiding the way her words made his chest feel strangely warm. Don't get soft now. But even as he told himself that, a small, genuine smile tugged at his lips. Because coming from her, it meant everything. Now that her questions were finally out of the way, Leon leaned back slightly, one hand resting over his thigh, gaze sharpening with the shift of gears in his mind. My turn now. He didn't bother with a preamble. Master, he began, voice calm. Back in the dungeon, there was something strange. A message appeared about connecting to the lesser system. What exactly is that? Seraphine blinked once. Then she gave a short nod, as if that question had been expected eventually. Oh, that. Her voice softened with familiarity. It's the foundation. Everyone who gets a class connects to the lesser system. It governs our class, abilities, affinity growth, all of it. Leon tilted his head slightly, keeping his expression composed. So, she doesn't know that I didn't connect to the lesser system at all. He stayed quiet, letting her explain without interrupting. Seraphine gestured lightly with her hand. You don't need to chant or say anything aloud. Just think about accessing your status screen in your mind, and it'll appear. It only shows for you. It's not something others can see. Leon absorbed the words, filing them away neatly. She wasn't going to explain further. Not because she didn't want to, but because for most people, that was enough. Go ahead, she said, folding her arms with a faint smile. Try it. You've probably seen the system already in the dungeon, right? This will be the same, just more detailed now that you're fully awakened. He gave a single nod in return. Call system, huh? Time to see how this works. Underscore is underscore way. Leon closed his eyes for breath. Status. The response was immediate. A soft shimmer passed over his vision, and in the next moment, a golden translucent screen unfolded before his eyes, thin, elegant, and only visible to him. The script was clean, glowing faintly with celestial precision. His gaze swept over the lines. Character information. Name, Yon. Level 1. Class. Elemental Paragon, SSS. Age. 10. Soul age, 19. Race. Human. Cultivation. Apprentice rank. Affinity. All. Rank 5. Strength, 8. Agility, 9. Stamina, 9. Mana, 1000. Intelligence, 100. Skills, none. Technique. Mana body enhancement, adept rank. So that's how it looks. He felt a strange stillness seeing it laid out like this. Who he was carved into golden lines. The title _Elemental Paragon _ glowed brighter than the rest, almost pulsing with quiet authority. The stats were modest outside of his mind and mana. Strength, agility, and stamina still look human, but intelligence and mana are already absurd for some of my age. An affinity rank 5 across the board. He lowered his hand to his lap, thoughtful. So this is what she thinks I got from the _lesser_ system. Wonder what her reaction would be if she saw the real screen from the _cosmic_1. Leon said nothing, the screen still floating before him like a mirror that told more than just the surface. But inwardly he smiled. All right, let's start putting this to use. Leon leaned back slightly, eyes still half focused on the screen only he could see. I can see it, he said quietly, gaze flicking to Seraphine. There's a screen with my stats. Everything's laid out. He left out the part about the golden color. Seraphine gave a pleased nod, her tone calm but faintly proud. Good. That's the system's standard interface, the blue screen. It helps you keep track of your growth, especially after class awakening. Leon tilted his head. So it's only for stats? She crossed one leg over the other, resting her elbow on the desk as she looked at him. That's all the lesser system does. It doesn't grant skills or guidance. It just tracks what you earn through effort. But don't underestimate it. With that screen, you can measure your progress in real time. No more guessing if your training worked. Leon hummed thoughtfully. So she really doesn't know anything else. That means the cosmic system isn't just stronger, it's completely unknown to this world. He folded his arms across his chest, relaxing a little. Got it. Just a status screen. Useful enough. Seraphine offered a soft smile. It may seem simple, but it'll become your best ally. Especially now that you've started walking your own path. Leon nodded once, gaze briefly lowering back to the faint shimmer only he could see. Started walking? That's exactly what it feels like. _______. Leon tapped his fingers lightly on the chair arm, eyes thoughtful. Apprentice rank. Level 1. That lines up with the status screen, but what does that really mean in terms of growth? He glanced at Seraphine. What's the connection between cultivation rank and level? Mine shows apprentice rank, level 1. Seraphine nodded. That's how it's structured. Cultivation ranks are divided by level thresholds. Apprentice rank spans levels 1 through 10. After that, you're supposed to break through to the next rank, which I don't know off. Leon's brows lifted. You don't know? You haven't seen people go beyond apprentice. Seraphine shook her head slowly. No, that's the thing. No one in the lower domain ever gets past level 10 apprentice. It's not the system that blocks it. It's the world itself. Leon blinked. Explain. She leaned back, crossing her arms. The mana density here is too low. Not enough to sustain advancement beyond level 10. You can train endlessly, but without a breakthrough source of power, like high-tier dungeons or concentrated mana zones, it's like trying to grow crops in barren soil. That explains it, Leon thought, silent. So they're not stuck because of the system. They're stuck because the environment won't let them go further. In dungeons, he asked aloud. Seraphine nodded again. Same story. The lower domain barely has any dungeons above beginner level. They're low tier, low risk, and they don't push people far enough. For me, those dungeons are practically worthless. Leon leaned back slightly. So that's why no one here has seen the other ranks. Not because they're not real, but because this place is a cage. And they don't even realize it. I see, he murmured. So even if someone's talented, their growth caps out just because the world doesn't give them enough to rise. Exactly. Seraphine looked at him carefully. Which is why your class and potential matter even more now. You'll be hitting the ceiling faster than anyone else. Leon didn't say anything, but in his heart, one thought echoed clearly. I'm not stopping at level 10. So you're also apprentice rank? He asked. Seraphine nodded and answered. Yes, I am apprentice rank level 10, but I have no realistic way of going any further. Disappointment was clearly visible in her eyes, but there was hope in her mind. She had tried that method, but failed and barely survived that day. What if Leon reaches level 10? Would he be able to take on those monsters in the Forbidden Region? She didn't have an answer to that question right now, but she believed if it was Leon, it could be possible with his rank class. That way he would be able to reach the next rank, which was close to impossible here. She really hoped that day would come. Author here, complete the challenges to get bonus chapters as a reward. The last echoes of battle faded like breath against glass. Leon stood still, his boots planted in a circle of scorched stone. The air still trembled faintly from the aftershock of his final attack, but already the silence was returning. Thick, absolute. He didn't move, didn't lower his guard. Frost still clung to parts of the chamber, spiderwebbing across melted black rock. Steam hissed softly from the cratered floor where his spear had struck. The monster's broken form lay just ahead, its upper half buried in cracked stone, body split, and still glowing faintly with elemental residue. A quiet hum lingered in his bones. It wasn't fading. He exhaled through his nose and raised a hand, slow and steady. The space before him shimmered, his storage activating. The air folded slightly inward as if it knew where to go. With a simple thought, the monster's corpse and the shattered fragments of its hammer vanished in a golden light. Even in ruins, the weapon had weight. Heat. History. He could still feel the echo of its strength as it disappeared into his pocket dimension. Maybe later, he'd try to reconstruct it. Maybe not. He could sell it for material or could found any other use of it. Right now, it was just done. Leon rotated his wrist, flexing his fingers. No trembling. No ache. He should have been drained. That spear, wind wrapped around condensed ice, launched with full force, had been more than anything he'd ever cast before. It had cracked stone, disrupted magic, ended a fight against something that had nearly crushed him. And yet, he wasn't empty, not even close. His mana hadn't just started recovering quickly. It had never dropped below a threshold he could feel. A quarter? The realization crept in as sensation, not logic. There was no meter telling him how much mana remained, just the feeling in his limbs, the buzz in his core, the invisible pressure of power waiting quietly beneath his skin. I didn't even push close to the limit. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt curious. He lowered his hand and turned back toward the throne, its surface fractured, the stone beneath his feet still steaming faintly. The aura of the battlefield had begun to settle, but something shifted behind the platform. Where there had been nothing, now there was space. A narrow opening in the wall. Black stone pulled inward like a door that had never needed hinges. Leon's eyes narrowed slightly. He took a few steps forward, head tilted slightly. No wind here. No residual magic. The air felt still, not stale but preserved. The temperature dropped half a degree, cool enough to notice, but not enough to chill. The new hallway extended into shadow. The floor was smooth obsidian, veined with thin golden lines, and carved with runes that trailed like vines. Some glowed, faintly blue, pulsing every few seconds. He couldn't read them, but the rhythm reminded him of a heartbeat, slow and patient. He kept walking. The deeper he went, the more the atmosphere shifted. Not in danger, not in tension, but in age. Like this part of the dungeon hadn't been touched for centuries. Like it wasn't meant to be seen until now. The hum grew louder the farther he moved. Not sound, but sensation. A quiet vibration that lived somewhere between his ribs and his spine. And then light. Soft golden. It spilled from a wide, circular chamber ahead, brushing faint warmth against his face. He reached the archway, one hand resting lightly against the stone frame, and stepped through. His eyes adjusted quickly. The room was small, round, domed ceiling. The walls shimmered faintly with a natural glow, light diffused through polished stone. And at the center, a pedestal, and on it, a chest, massive, rectangular, the kind of heavy, deliberate shape that spoke of permanence. Its corners were wrapped in gold bands, edges traced in silver filigree. Script lined the top in circular patterns, half faded, half radiant. The glyphs weren't just decoration. They pulsed once, faint and alive. Leon stopped 3 steps away. He didn't speak, didn't blink. The feeling in his chest tightened, not from threat, from weight. It didn't feel like a reward. It felt like recognition. He crouched slowly, not taking his eyes off the chest, and extended a whisper of wind, fine as thread, sharp as a knife's edge. The current drifted forward, brushed against the latch, and nudged. Click. No spark. No curse. No rejection. Just a simple sound. Accepted. He guided the wind upward, wrapping around the lid. Lifted. Slowly. The lid creaked as it slowly started to reveal the inside. Light spilled through the crack. Muted, amber gold. When it finally opened far enough to see inside, Leon leaned forward. Then froze. He stared. No movement. No breath. Just him. And platinum. Rows. Bars. Stacked side by side. Each one stamped and flawless. Arranged so neatly, it looked ceremonial. He didn't speak for several seconds, realizing what he had just found. Then quietly, "That's platinum." The words came out flat. He blinked. Bars of it. No one answered, obviously. Not coins. Bars. Literal bars. Dozens. No, hundreds. Maybe more. He squinted. Leaned in. Recounted. Nope. Still there. Huh. He rocked back on his heels. Still crouched. Still staring. No expression. Then softly. "I'm rich." Pause. Head tilt. Wait. "No. I'm wealthy." His voice had gained depth. Confusion replaced by recognition. "Filthy, catastrophic. You make the merchant faint just by walking in wealthy." He let out a quiet, stunned laugh and ran a hand through his hair. He remembered Seraphine once showing him a single platinum coin, polished and locked in a velvet-lined case. She'd said it was worth over 100 gold. One coin. One. He had what? He didn't want to count. His stomach turned at the thought of math. This is wrong. But his grin widened anyway. Not smug. Not greedy. Just, what the hell is my life? He reached out and gently lowered the lid. The creak was softer this time, like the chest understood. He rested a hand on top. "You're mine now," he murmured. "Stay quiet, stay pretty, and don't start glowing randomly." A flick of his wrist, and the chest vanished into storage. The noise it made wasn't dramatic, but it felt expensive to him. Leon stood. Let the silence settle again. He didn't need to celebrate. The win was enough. His steps took him around the pedestal where the far wall looked collapsed, until he got closer. A tunnel. Sloping. Familiar, not the same as before it reminded the before. He stopped at the edge, tilted his head down. A chute. His fingers curled once. Images flickered, of falling, of pain, of that chamber with the throne and the monster that broke his bones like dry twigs. He took one breath. Not deep, not steady, just real. "I'm not the same anymore." The words came quietly. He crouched again, planted his palms on his thighs. Wind gathered faintly around his boots, not flaring, just ready. He looked into the tunnel, didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, then pushed off and dropped in, without any panic and scream. He glided smooth through the tunnel. He descended into the dark, shoulders squared, eyes open. Whatever waited at the bottom, he'd deal with it. The last echoes of battle faded like breath against glass. Leon stood still, his boots planted in a circle of scorched stone. The air still trembled faintly from the aftershock of his final attack, but already the silence was returning, thick, absolute. He didn't move, didn't lower his guard. Frost still clung to parts of the chamber, spiderwebbing across melted black rock. Steam hissed softly from the cratered floor where his spear had struck. The monster's broken form lay just ahead, its upper half buried in cracked stone, body split, and still glowing faintly with elemental residue. A quiet hum lingered in his bones. It wasn't fading. He exhaled through his nose and raised a hand, slow and steady. The space before him shimmered, his storage activating. The air folded slightly inward as if it knew where to go. With a simple thought, the monster's corpse and the shattered fragments of its hammer vanished in a golden light. Even in ruins, the weapon had weight. Heat. History. He could still feel the echo of its strength as it disappeared into his pocket dimension. Maybe later, he'd try to reconstruct it. Maybe not. He could sell it for material or could find any other use of it. Right now, it was just done. Leon rotated his wrist, flexing his fingers. No trembling. No ache. He should have been drained. That spear, wind wrapped around condensed ice, launched with full force, had been more than anything he'd ever cast before. It had cracked stone, disrupted magic, ended a fight against something that had nearly crushed him. And yet, he wasn't empty, not even close. His mana hadn't just started recovering quickly. It had never dropped below a threshold he could feel. A quarter? The realization crept in as sensation, not logic. There was no meter telling him how much mana remained, just the feeling in his limbs, the buzz in his core, the invisible pressure of power waiting quietly beneath his skin. I didn't even push close to the limit. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt curious. He lowered his hand and turned back toward the throne, its surface fractured, the stone beneath his feet still steaming faintly. The aura of the battlefield had begun to settle, but something shifted behind the platform. Where there had been nothing, now there was space. A narrow opening in the wall. Black stone pulled inward like a door that had never needed hinges. Leon's eyes narrowed slightly. He took a few steps forward, head tilted slightly. No wind here. No residual magic. The air felt still, not stale but preserved. The temperature dropped half a degree, cool enough to notice, but not enough to chill. The new hallway extended into shadow. The floor was smooth obsidian, veined with thin golden lines, and carved with runes that trailed like vines. Some glowed, faintly blue, pulsing every few seconds. He couldn't read them, but the rhythm reminded him of a heartbeat, slow and patient. He kept walking. The deeper he went, the more the atmosphere shifted. Not in danger, not in tension, but in age. Like this part of the dungeon hadn't been touched for centuries. Like it wasn't meant to be seen until now. The hum grew louder the farther he moved. Not sound, but sensation. A quiet vibration that lived somewhere between his ribs and his spine. And then light. Soft golden. It spilled from a wide, circular chamber ahead, brushing faint warmth against his face. He reached the archway, one hand resting lightly against the stone frame, and stepped through. His eyes adjusted quickly. The room was small, round, domed ceiling. The walls shimmered faintly with a natural glow, light diffused through polished stone. And at the center, a pedestal, and on it, a chest, massive, rectangular, the kind of heavy, deliberate shape that spoke of permanence. Its corners were wrapped in gold bands, edges traced in silver filigree. Script lined the top in circular patterns, half faded, half radiant. The glyphs weren't just decoration. They pulsed once, faint and alive. Leon stopped 3 steps away. He didn't speak, didn't blink. The feeling in his chest tightened, not from threat, from weight. It didn't feel like a reward. It felt like recognition. He crouched slowly, not taking his eyes off the chest, and extended a whisper of wind, fine as thread, sharp as a knife's edge. The current drifted forward, brushed against the latch, and nudged. Click. No spark. No curse. No rejection. Just a simple sound. Accepted. He guided the wind upward, wrapping around the lid. Lifted. Slowly. The lid creaked as it slowly started to reveal the inside. Light spilled through the crack. Muted, amber gold. When it finally opened far enough to see inside, Leon leaned forward. Then froze. He stared. No movement. No breath. Just him. And platinum. Rows. Bars. Stacked side by side. Each one stamped and flawless. arranged so neatly it looked ceremonial. He didn't speak for several seconds, realizing what he had just found. Then quietly, "That's platinum." The words came out flat. He blinked. Bars of it. No one answered, obviously. Not coins. Bars. Literal bars. Dozens. No, hundreds. Maybe more. He squinted. Leaned in. Recounted. Nope. Still there. Huh. He rocked back on his heels. Still crouched. Still staring. No expression. Then softly. "I'm rich." Pause. Head tilt. Wait. "No. I'm wealthy." His voice had gained depth. Confusion replaced by recognition. "Filthy, catastrophic. You make the merchant faint just by walking in wealthy." He let out a quiet, stunned laugh and ran a hand through his hair. He remembered Seraphine once showing him a single platinum coin, polished and locked in a velvet-lined case. She'd said it was worth over 100 gold. One coin. One. He had what? He didn't want to count. His stomach turned at the thought of math. This is wrong. But his grin widened anyway. Not smug. Not greedy. Just, what the hell is my life? He reached out and gently lowered the lid. The creak was softer this time, like the chest understood. He rested a hand on top. "You're mine now," he murmured. "Stay quiet, stay pretty, and don't start glowing randomly." A flick of his wrist, and the chest vanished into storage. The noise it made wasn't dramatic, but it felt expensive to him. Leon stood. Let the silence settle again. He didn't need to celebrate. The win was enough. His steps took him around the pedestal where the far wall looked collapsed, until he got closer. A tunnel. Sloping. Familiar, not the same as before it reminded the before. He stopped at the edge, tilted his head down. A chute. His fingers curled once. Images flickered, of falling, of pain, of that chamber with the throne and the monster that broke his bones like dry twigs. He took one breath. Not deep, not steady, just real. "I'm not the same anymore." The words came quietly. He crouched again, planted his palms on his thighs. Wind gathered faintly around his boots, not flaring, just ready. He looked into the tunnel, didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, then pushed off and dropped in, without any panic and scream. He glided smooth through the tunnel. He descended into the dark, shoulders squared, eyes open. Whatever waited at the bottom, he'd deal with it. From what Leon understood, passive abilities were supposed to activate on their own, without any conscious effort. So when he checked his affinity rank, a question formed in his mind. Does that mean my actual affinity rank was 3, and after the increase it went to 5? He considered it seriously for a moment. It was possible, but then he remembered Seraphine's lightning affinity was also rank 5. If his had only been 3 to begin with, that felt disappointingly low in comparison. So even after getting a divine treasure, I was still 2 ranks below her. The thought sat wrong with him. Driven by curiosity, he closed his eyes and focused, wondering, what if the ability didn't activate on its own? What if I needed to will it into effect? Passive ability, elemental crown. Effect, when used, all elemental affinities are increased by +2 ranks, regardless of their original tier. The moment he focused on it, he felt it, an immediate surge in awareness. His connection to the elements sharpened and deepened. It was like stepping from candlelight into open sunlight. The difference was stark, undeniable. He got to his feet and walked across the stone-tiled floor of his room to the tall mirror standing against the wall. It had a dark wood frame etched with swirling patterns of wind and flame. A gift from Seraphine, though she'd never said so aloud. Standing in front of it, he examined his reflection closely. There was no visible change, no glowing marks, no crackling aura, not even a faint shimmer. And that was comforting. He couldn't feel even the slightest bit of mana leaking from his body. There was no drain, no resistance. It felt like this ability wasn't something he used. It was something that was a natural extension of himself. He let out a breath of quiet relief. He already drew too much attention as it was, especially with his eyes. Silver white irises etched with a pristine cross at the center, surrounded by a swirling halo of color that shifted with the light. The eyes really are kind of mesmerizing. If he saw someone else with those eyes, even he would have done a double take. Maybe stared a little too long. Now, fully certain the ability was active, he called up his system interface to see the change firsthand. And sure enough, the confirmation was there. But something else caught his attention too. Two unfamiliar entries below the standard status panel. New system functions, newly unlocked. Character information. Name, Leon. Level 1. Class, Elemental Paragon, SSS. Age, 10. Soul age, 19. Race, human. Cultivation, apprentice rank. Affinity, all, rank 7. Strength, 8. Agility, 9. Stamina, 9. Mana, 1000. Intelligence, 100. Skills, none. Technique, mana body enhancement, adept rank. Cosmic shop, cosmic chat. Leon stared at the new value. Rank 7. That's high. It has to be. Excitement stirred in his chest, but it was quickly followed by a quieter thought. But how high is high? What's the scale? Is 7 close to the max, or just a stepping stone? He didn't know, and that bothered him. Seraphine had never spoken about maximum affinity ranks, and he doubted most people even had access to that kind of information. I'll have to find out eventually, but not now. For now, he was still a first-level nobody in the eyes of the world. He took a breath, steadying himself. His eyes shifted toward the faintly glowing icon labeled Cosmic Shop. Let's see what kind of things this shop has to offer. And with that, he reached toward the unknown once again. Cosmic System Shop Interface. Payment type, casualties registered by system. All prices calculated by the Cosmic System based on existential value loss. Once the purchase is made, there is no going back. Your identity is protected by the Cosmic System. Undersir. 1. Chronostasis Ring, legendary item. Freezes time for exactly 3 seconds. Usable once every 24 hours. Price, 9 million. Vendor, Lord of Time and Space. 2. Ethereal Step, epic skill. Teleport a short distance instantly. Cooldown applies. Price, 710,000. Vendor, Blink McTwist. 3. Inferno Blade, epic weapon. A sword wreathed in eternal flame. Passively increases fire affinity. Price, 1,700,000. Vendor, Captain Burnbottom. 4. Static Pulse Core, rare item. Generates a one-time shield that nullifies lightning damage. Price, 125,000. Vendor, the current collector. 5. Void Grasp, rare technique. Immobilizes enemies with a surge of shadow energy. Price, 200,000. Vendor, Shady Steve. 6. Gale Dancer's Cloak, rare armor. Boosts wind affinity and agility-based evasion. Price, 180,000. Vendor, Madame Breezy. 7. Frostfang Technique, epic technique. A deadly piercing strike that chills the target's soul and slows movement. Price, 910,000. Vendor, Sir Chillington. 8. Mana Reservoir Pearl, epic item. Permanently increases total mana pool by plus 300. Price, 350,000. Vendor, Professor Overflow. 9. Phoenix Feather Amulet, legendary item. Revives the wearer upon death once. Price, 2,500,000. Vendor, Resurrecto Maximus. 10. Elemental Surge, legendary skill. Temporarily raises all elemental affinities by 1 rank for 60 seconds. Price, 3 million. Vendor, Lord of Time and Space. 11. Seismic Tremor Step, rare skill. Every footstep sends out shockwaves that disrupt balance nearby. Price, 190,000. Vendor, Stomp McGraw. 12. Mystic Mirror Shard, rare item. Reflects 1 spell back to its original caster. Price, 270,000. Vendor, Reflection Rick. _________. 13. Arcane Shackle, rare technique. Bind a target's mana flow for 5 seconds. Price, 320,000. Vendor, Warden Wink. __________. 14. Dimensional Pocket Cape, rare item. A cloak that contains a pocket dimension for storage. Price, 220,000. Vendor, Hoarder Herald. __________. 15. Hourglass of Reversal, rare item. Rewinds time in a 3-meter radius by 3 seconds. Single use. Price, 120,000. Vendor, Professor Timealot. __________. 16. Mirror of True Self, rare item. Reveals the target's truest nature. Useful for interrogation or emotional ruin. Price, 80,000. Vendor, Lady What's-Her-Name, the Unstable. __________. 17. Feather of Dimensional Drift, epic item. Lets the user blink into an adjacent dimension for up to 10 seconds. Price, 150,000. Vendor, Duke of Nope. _________. 18. Coin of Absolute Luck, epic item. Flip it. One outcome brings glory. The other, ruin. No in between. Price, 210,000. Vendor, Gambler X of the 7th Table. __________. 19. Cradle Seed of Elements, divine item. Once planted in the body, gradually enhances all possessed elemental affinities. Price, 790 million. Vendor, the Keeper of the Dimensions. _________. 20. Chain of Infinite Anchoring, rare item. Immobilizes any creature of your level or lower. Blocks all teleportation. Price, 250,000. Vendor, Granny Clampjaw. _________. 21. Tome of Eternal Practice, epic item. Simulates 10,000 hours of training in your mind. Usable once per day. Price, 6 million. Vendor, Archivist of the Unskimmable. _________. 22. Cloak of Singular Focus, rare armor. Nullifies all illusions, mental attacks, and distractions. Price, 180,000. Vendor, Monk Dave the Barefoot. _________. 23. Shard of Unburned Ice, rare item. Grants a permanent magical shield that blocks fire damage. Price, 95,000. Vendor, Queen Chillington 4. _________. 24. Mark of Hidden Step, rare skill. Perfect stealth for 15 seconds. Cool down, 24 hours. Price, 300,000. Vendor, Mr. Peekaboo. _________. 25. Lantern of Soul Echoes, epic item. Speak with one spirit of your choice for 60 seconds. Price, 1 million. Vendor, Warden of Last Whispers. _________. 26. Seed of Stormlight Heart, legendary item. Implants within the user and evolve their lightning and light affinities over time. Price, 15 million. Vendor, Lord of Lightning and Luminance. __________. 27. Scepter of Spatial Folding, rare item. Grants localized teleportation and storage manipulation for 1 hour. Price, 380,000. Vendor, Baron Bagspace the Twisted. _________. 28. Vial of Second Breath, epic elixir. Restores all physical health instantly. Can revive near-death states. Price, 320,000. Vendor, Dr. Feeks from the Skeptical. _________. 29. Whistle of the Boundless Mount, rare summon. Summons a spectral steed that adapts to terrain and danger. Price, 220,000. Vendor, Stable Master, nay means nay. Leon's mystical eyes hovered over the long list of things that suddenly popped up in front of him. He was truly shocked. Cosmic System Shop Interface. Payment type, causality, registered by system. All prices calculated by the Cosmic System based on existential value loss. Once a purchase is made, there is no going back. Your identity is protected by the cosmic system. Reading the first part, which looked like a few beginner tips meant to guide newbies, Leon blinked. Causality. It wasn't a term unfamiliar to him. He'd read fantasy novels in his spare time every now and then, when life wasn't kicking him too hard. Even without deep knowledge, he had some idea. In simple terms, it's like cause and effect. Let's suppose I had 1,000 gold coins right now. With that, I could do a lot of things like plan an assassination on a noble house's heir. If that assassination succeeded, it would shift the future, right? The outcome would be different. And that means those coins were part of a chain of events, a cause. Which means those coins now hold a causality value of their own, depending on what they helped me achieve. Even thinking about it twisted his mind. What if the coins were used for something else entirely? What if the assassination failed? How could the system possibly measure their value if the future hadn't even happened yet? He let the thought trail off. Trying to figure it out any further wasn't going to help him. The one deciding the causality value was the system itself. Just from a name alone, I can guess it's tied to the entire cosmos. So whatever outcome those 1,000 coins lead to, the value must be judged by how much it affects the greater cosmic balance. He didn't know if his theory was right or even close. It was too complex to fully understand. But for now, it was the only explanation that made sense to him. He stopped thinking about it and focused on the item list below. 1. Chronostasis Ring, legendary item. Freezes time for exactly 3 seconds. Usable once every 24 hours. Price, 9 million. Vendor, Lord of Time and Space. Chronostasis Ring. Legendary rank, he murmured, half in disbelief. He read the description again. 3 seconds of frozen time. A reusable item. 3 seconds. That's more than enough to decide life or death in a battle. That's way too overpowered, especially when it resets every 24 hours. He stared at the price. 9 million causalities. He didn't know how high that was, not yet. He had no comparison, but instinct told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't going to be cheap. And then his gaze drifted to the last line. He couldn't help but say it out loud. Lord of Time and Space. The words barely left his lips before the air shifted. The very atmosphere around him trembled. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. But something pressed in from all directions, like a soundless vibration rolling through reality. It scared him a little. What is this? A universal ringtone. He tried to laugh it off, but the effect was far from funny. In fact, it was terrifying. He swore to himself then and there that he would never speak another vendor's name out loud. Whoever was selling these items, they were not the kind of entities he wanted looking in his direction. Meanwhile, in a dimension untethered to physical time, where reality bent and stretched like breath through silk, clock halos drifted slowly in endless space. Some ticked backward, some spiraled, others simply hovered, motionless but pulsing with presence. Amidst them sat a woman, floating, legs crossed, posture calm. Silver hair floated around her like fluid light, brushing the air as if it, too, had memory. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises etched with countless clock faces, all shifting at different speeds. Her expression was calm, until it wasn't. A faint ripple of irritation passed over her ethereal features. Her beauty wasn't mortal. It wasn't even divine. It was impossible, the kind that could freeze a god mid-sentence. "Who the fuck is calling my name?" she muttered. She knew instantly. It had to be another lord, a being of equal or near-equal power. Only something at that level would trigger a ping through her dimensional boundary. As for the weaker ones, she'd long since turned their notifications off, and the fact that she couldn't trace the face or the source only confirmed her suspicion. Only one person in existence could do that in the existing lords. That bitch. I told her no pranks while I'm in seclusion. Her annoyance simmered. When I come out of this in 1,000 years, I'm going to spank her through 6 timelines for this stunt. The Lord of Time and Space closed her eyes and resumed her trance, unaware that the one who triggered it wasn't a cheeky lord. It was just a silver-haired boy on some forgotten plane whose existence was important enough to trigger her senses, or there was something else at play? Who made the mistake of saying her name out loud? Underscore, 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 underscore. 2. Ethereal step, epic skill. Teleport a short distance instantly. Cooldown applies. Price, 710,000. Vendor, Blink McTwist. Underscore, 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 underscore. 3. Inferno blade, epic weapon. A sword wreathed in eternal flame. Passively increases fire affinity. Price, 1,700,000. Vendor, Captain Burnbottom. Underscore, 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 underscore. 4. Static Pulse Core, rare item. Generates a one-time shield that nullifies lightning damage. Price, 125,000. Vendor, the current collector. Underscore, 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 underscore. 5. Void Grasp, rare technique. Immobilizes enemies with a surge of shadow energy. Price, 200,000. Vendor, Shady Steve. Underscore, 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 underscore. 6. Gale Dancer's Cloak, rare armor. Boosts wind affinity and agility-based evasion. Price, 180,000. Vendor, Madame Breezy. Underscore, 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 underscore. 7. Frostfang Technique, epic technique. A deadly piercing strike that chills the target's soul and slows movement. Price, 910,000. Vendor, Sir Chillington. Underscore, 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 underscore. 8. Mana Reservoir Pearl, epic item. Permanently increases total mana pool by plus 300. Price, 350,000. Vendor, Professor Overflow. Underscore, 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 underscore. 9. Phoenix Feather Amulet, legendary item. Revives the wearer upon death once. Price, 2,500,000. Vendor, Resurrecto Maximus. Underscore, 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 underscore. 10. Elemental Surge, legendary skill. Temporarily raises all elemental affinities by 1 rank for 60 seconds. Price, 3 million. Vendor, Lord of Time and Space. Underscore, 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 underscore. 11. Seismic Tremor Step, rare skill. Every footstep sends out shockwaves that disrupt balance nearby. Price, 190,000. Vendor, Stomp McGraw. Underscore, 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 underscore. 12. Mystic Mirror Shard, rare item. Reflects 1 spell back to its original caster. Price, 270,000. Vendor, Reflection Rick. Underscore, 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 underscore. 13. Arcane Shackle, rare technique. Bind a target's mana flow for 5 seconds. Price, 320,000. Vendor, Warden Wink. Underscore, 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 underscore. 14. Dimensional Pocket Cape, rare item. Leon's mystical eyes hovered over the long list of things that suddenly popped up in front of him. He was truly shocked. Cosmic System Shop Interface. Payment type, causality, registered by system. All prices calculated by the Cosmic System based on existential value loss. Once a purchase is made, there is no going back. Your identity is protected by the Cosmic System. Reading the first part, which looked like a few beginner tips meant to guide newbies, Leon blinked. Causality. It wasn't a term unfamiliar to him. He'd read fantasy novels in his spare time every now and then, when life wasn't kicking him too hard. Even without deep knowledge, he had some idea. In simple terms, it's like cause and effect. Let's suppose I had 1,000 gold coins right now. With that, I could do a lot of things like plan an assassination on a noble house's heir. If that assassination succeeded, it would shift the future, right? The outcome would be different. And that means those coins were part of a chain of events, a cause. Which means those coins now hold a causality value of their own, depending on what they helped me achieve. Even thinking about it twisted his mind. What if the coins were used for something else entirely? What if the assassination failed? How could the system possibly measure their value if the future hadn't even happened yet? He let the thought trail off. Trying to figure it out any further wasn't going to help him. The one deciding the causality value was the system itself. Just from a name alone, I can guess it's tied to the entire cosmos. So whatever outcome those 1,000 coins lead to, the value must be judged by how much it affects the greater cosmic balance. He didn't know if his theory was right or even close. It was too complex to fully understand. But for now, it was the only explanation that made sense to him. He stopped thinking about it and focused on the item list below. 1. Chronostasis Ring, legendary item. Freezes time for exactly 3 seconds. Usable once every 24 hours. Price, 9 million. Vendor, Lord of Time and Space. Chronostasis Ring. Legendary rank, he murmured, half in disbelief. He read the description again. 3 seconds of frozen time. A reusable item. 3 seconds, that's more than enough to decide life or death in a battle. That's way too overpowered, especially when it resets every 24 hours. He stared at the price. 9 million causalities. He didn't know how high that was, not yet. He had no comparison, but instinct told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't going to be cheap. And then his gaze drifted to the last line. He couldn't help but say it out loud. Lord of Time and Space. The words barely left his lips before the air shifted. The very atmosphere around him trembled. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. But something pressed in from all directions, like a soundless vibration rolling through reality. It scared him a little. What is this? A universal ringtone. He tried to laugh it off, but the effect was far from funny. In fact, it was terrifying. He swore to himself then and there that he would never speak another vendor's name out loud. Whoever was selling these items, they were not the kind of entities he wanted looking in his direction. Meanwhile, in a dimension untethered to physical time, where reality bent and stretched like breath through silk, clock halos drifted slowly in endless space. Some ticked backward, some spiraled, others simply hovered, motionless but pulsing with presence. Amidst them sat a woman, floating, legs crossed, posture calm. Silver hair floated around her like fluid light, brushing the air as if it, too, had memory. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises etched with countless clock faces, all shifting at different speeds. Her expression was calm, until it wasn't. A faint ripple of irritation passed over her ethereal features. Her beauty wasn't mortal. It wasn't even divine. It was impossible, the kind that could freeze a god mid-sentence. "Who the fuck is calling my name?" she muttered. She knew instantly. It had to be another lord, a being of equal or near-equal power. Only something at that level would trigger a ping through her dimensional boundary. As for the weaker ones, she'd long since turned their notifications off, and the fact that she couldn't trace the face or the source only confirmed her suspicion. Only one person in existence could do that in the existing lords. That bitch. I told her no pranks while I'm in seclusion. Her annoyance simmered. When I come out of this in 1,000 years, I'm going to spank her through 6 timelines for this stunt. The Lord of Time and Space closed her eyes and resumed her trance, unaware that the one who triggered it wasn't a cheeky lord. It was just a silver-haired boy on some forgotten plane whose existence was important enough to trigger her senses, or there was something else at play. Who made the mistake of saying her name out loud? Underscore, 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 underscore. 2. Ethereal step, epic skill. Teleport a short distance instantly. Cooldown applies. Price, 710,000. Vendor, Blink McTwist. Underscore, 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 underscore. 3. Inferno Blade, epic weapon. A sword wreathed in eternal flame. Passively increases fire affinity. Price, 1,700,000. Vendor, Captain Burnbottom. Underscore, 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 underscore. 4. Static Pulse Core, rare item. Generates a one-time shield that nullifies lightning damage. Price, 125,000. Vendor, the current collector. Underscore, 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 underscore. 5. Void Grasp, rare technique. Immobilizes enemies with a surge of shadow energy. Price, 200,000. Vendor, Shady Steve. Underscore, 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 underscore. 6. Gale Dancer's Cloak, rare armor. Boosts wind affinity and agility-based evasion. Price, 180,000. Vendor, Madame Breezy. Underscore, 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 underscore. 7. Frostfang Technique, epic technique. A deadly piercing strike that chills the target's soul and slows movement. Price, 910,000. Vendor, Sir Chillington. Underscore, 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 underscore. 8. Mana Reservoir Pearl, epic item. Permanently increases total mana pool by plus 300. Price, 350,000. Vendor, Professor Overflow. Underscore, 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 underscore. 9. Phoenix Feather Amulet, legendary item. Revives the wearer upon death once. Price, 2,500,000. Vendor, Resurrecto Maximus. Underscore, 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 underscore. 10. Elemental Surge, legendary skill. Temporarily raises all elemental affinities by 1 rank for 60 seconds. Price, 3 million. Vendor, Lord of Time and Space. Underscore, 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 underscore. 11. Seismic Tremor Step, rare skill. Every footstep sends out shockwaves that disrupt balance nearby. Price, 190,000. Vendor, Stomp McGraw. Underscore, 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 underscore. 12. Mystic Mirror Shard, rare item. Reflects 1 spell back to its original caster. Price, 270,000. Vendor, Reflection Rick. Underscore, 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 underscore. 13. Arcane Shackle, rare technique. Bind a target's mana flow for 5 seconds. Price, 320,000. Vendor, Warden Wink. Underscore, 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 underscore. 14. Dimensional Pocket Cape, rare item. A cloak that contains a pocket dimension for storage. Price, 220,000. Vendor, Hoarder Herald. Underscore, 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 underscore. 15. Hourglass of Reversal, epic item. Rewinds time in a 3-meter radius by 3 seconds. Single use. Price, 120,000. Vendor, Professor Timealot. Underscore, 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 underscore. 16. Mirror of True Self, rare item. Reveals the target's truest nature. Useful for interrogation or emotional ruin. Price, 80,000. Vendor, Lady What's-Her-Name, the Unstable. Underscore, 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 underscore. 17. Feather of Dimensional Drift, epic item. Lets the user blink into an adjacent dimension for up to 10 seconds. Price, 950,000. Vendor, Duke of Nope. Underscore, 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 underscore. 18. Coin of Absolute Luck, epic item. Flip it. One outcome brings glory. The other, ruin. No in between. Price, 410,000. Vendor, Gambler X of the 7th Table. Underscore, 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 underscore. 19. Cradle Seed of Elements, divine item. Once planted in the body, gradually enhances all owned elemental affinities. Price, 790 million. Vendor, the Keeper of the Dimensions. Underscore, 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 underscore. Many more. He couldn't help but smile seeing countless items, skills, and techniques listed here, as no matter how much he scrolled down, it never ended. Leon read through every single detail of the items, skills, elixirs, and techniques that appeared in front of the first page. The interface shimmered faintly, like sunlight dancing across rippling water, lending the catalog an ethereal aura. If he had causality, he would want to have every single thing on that list. But he knew he couldn't do that. However, there was one item that caught his eyes and held them fast. 19. Cradle Seed of Elements, divine item. Once planted in the body, gradually enhances all possessed elemental affinities. Price, 790 million. Vendor, the Keeper of the Dimensions. A divine ranked item that could enhance elemental affinities over time. I have an affinity for every element possible, so this item would be heaven sent for me. He had never heard of a divine ranked item before, but he could guess that it had to be higher than mythical. The problem was the price. It was a staggering 790 million causality to buy, and the vendor was none other than the Keeper of the Dimensions. This time, Leon was careful not to say the name out loud. Whatever had happened previously when he muttered Lord of Time and Space, he absolutely hated the sensation that followed. He had no desire to repeat that mistake. After learning more about these cosmic entities, who might possess unimaginable power, Leon recalled one important detail. While I was awakening my class, I had the option to choose between these same classes. They were SSS ranked like mine. Now I finally understand why those powerful-sounding classes were listed as ultra-rare rather than unique. They were unique classes, but had I chosen them, they would have become ultra-rare because I would have shared the same class as those entities. So that meant his class, Elemental Paragon, and SSS rank class, was on the same level as theirs. It didn't take him long to grasp how powerful these entities might be. One of them was selling a divine rank treasure. That same entity's class had been a class option for him. His class had the potential to reach the peak. He was thrilled to realize this. There was a search box located in the top right corner of the golden, shimmering screen floating in front of him. Leon knew he couldn't afford any of these treasures right now. He wanted to find something cheaper and useful in the present. He mentally typed the word Cultivation into the search bar. A single thought was enough to activate the search, something he quite appreciated. It was such a handy feature. But no results appeared for what he wanted. He was looking for a guide that would explain the cultivation ranks above apprentice rank, or even above that, but nothing came up. He tried searching various phrases: ranking of cultivation, world structure, cosmos hierarchy, earthly plane progression. After 2 long hours of doom scrolling through useless entries, he finally found something that genuinely piqued his interest. Hashtag Self-Biography of the Great Master Longstaff, Rare Book. An autobiographical disaster penned by a self-proclaimed genius who claims to have seduced a dragon, outdueled a sword saint, and dated a fairy. Contains far too many shirtless illustrations and footnotes about techniques that definitely aren't martial. My journey from lowest of the low ascendant realm to divine realm. Price, 100 casualties. Vendor, Master Longstaff, the endlessly accomplished. Leon knew this book wasn't exactly what he had set out to find, but the last line in the description caught his attention like a hook. Ascendant realm to divine realm. Those were realms definitely above his current earthly realm. And since it was an autobiography, it would likely contain not just cultivation rankings, but also hidden insights and obscure knowledge he hadn't encountered before. The most important thing? It was absurdly cheap compared to everything else, only 100 causality. But in order to buy it, he needed to trade something in exchange for causality. One option came to mind. Oddly enough, he hadn't seen a single monster mana core being sold in the shop. That struck him as strange. Selling those would have made things easier, and leveling up would be much faster for anyone who could afford them. So he decided not to exchange the cores for causality. Instead, the platinum bars seemed like the best choice for a trade. He took the entire treasure box out of his inventory. Massive, ornate. It was banded in glowing gold, etched with elegant silver filigree and ancient runic script that shimmered like morning light touching still water. The aura it gave off wasn't hostile, but it was dense, thick with age and presence, as if it had waited a lifetime for this moment. Seeing the chest again made Leon feel good. He smiled faintly, satisfied. He was rich, no, beyond rich. He was a billionaire. He pressed his hand against the treasure chest and summoned the cosmic system mentally, asking it to calculate the causality value of the item before him. A golden number began to shimmer above the box. It rose slowly from 0, digit by digit, until it stopped at 289,000. It was more than I had expected. Then again, it made sense. That much wealth could probably sway the course of kingdoms or the outcome of wars. Trying to be smart, Leon decided to take out 5 platinum bars. That should be enough to live comfortably for a lifetime without ever worrying about food or clothing, assuming he didn't indulge in too much luxury. However, when he checked the causality value of the box again, it had dropped to a measly 98,000. I just lost almost 2/3 of the original value. It didn't feel fair. There were absolutely more than 300 bars in that chest, and taking just 5 had caused the causality to drop so dramatically. That's nasty. He returned 4 of the bars back into the chest and checked again, hoping to regain some of the value. The result this time, 189,000. 189,000. A full 100,000 less than the original assessment. All because of one missing bar. Fuck this system, wanting to see me as a beggar. Leon knew he would regret it later. He tried to hold on to one platinum bar, just one, and because of that, he lost a staggering 100,000 causality. He absolutely couldn't accept that outcome. Even if it meant crying tears of blood, he had to undo his mistake. With quiet resignation, he lowered himself onto both knees on the cold floor. The weight of his decision pressed on his chest. Carefully, almost reverently, he opened the ornate treasure chest once more and placed the final platinum bar back inside. His hands lingered on the glowing surface of the luxurious golden chest, slowly caressing the etched filigree and softly glowing runes. It was as if he were saying goodbye to an old friend. His fingers trembled. His eyes shimmered. Not tears exactly, but the edges were moist, a vulnerable glaze threatening to fall at any moment. Do it. Exchange this with causality, he whispered, barely able to raise his voice. A notification flickered in front of him, sharp and clinical. Are you sure you want to exchange the item for causality? Why, yes, he replied. His voice cracked slightly, the word catching in his throat like it hurt to say. Oh, bye-bye, my dear friend. The moment the confirmation passed, the massive golden treasure chest vanished. Not in a burst of light, nor with any mystical rumble. No tremor in the air, no flash of magic, no whisper from the void. It simply glitched, like it had never existed, gone in a smooth flicker. And just like that, reality slammed back into Leon's chest like a hammer. I'm poor again. I was only a billionaire for one day. Another notification appeared in front of him. You have earned 289,000 causalities. At least that message softened the blow. A little, just a little, but the mark had already been made. The pain of parting with wealth so immense would linger in the corners of his soul for a long time. Leon knew he couldn't waste time contemplating this tragedy any longer. He had the causality now, finally. That meant he could purchase the book that might hold the information he desperately needed. Hashtag self-biography of the great master Longstaff _rare book _ an autobiographical disaster penned by a self-proclaimed genius who claims to have seduced a dragon, outdueled a sword saint, and dated a fairy. Contains way too many shirtless illustrations and footnotes about techniques that definitely aren't martial. My journey from lowest of the low ascendant realm to divine realm. Price, 100 casualties. Vendor, Master Longstaff, the endlessly accomplished _ It was suspiciously cheap, which made it easier for Leon to gamble on. Still, from the description alone, he already knew it would contain questionable content. In his previous world, he'd died at the tender age of 16. Young. Far too young. He hadn't even finished high school. Hadn't traveled. Hadn't really lived. But somehow, against all odds, he had managed to have a girlfriend. Briefly. 1 week. 7 days of awkward hand-holding, clammy palms, and bashful smiles traded between classes. It was clumsy and innocent, the kind of relationship that barely qualified as real by adult standards. But to him, back then, it had meant everything. And then Devin happened. His obnoxious, loud, effortlessly magnetic stepbrother who couldn't, for the life of him, mind his own damn business. A single joke. A badly timed comment. One smile too many in the wrong direction. That was all it took to shatter the fragile thing Leon had barely begun to build. She left him the very next day, convinced he was using her to mask a secret crush on Devin. Not angry, just confused. Hurt. He tried to explain. Told her it was all a misunderstanding. But nothing worked. Leon still remembered standing in the school courtyard, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the pavement, his backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. He'd watched her walk away without a word. Tears in her eyes. No explanation. No confrontation. Just silence that screamed louder than any goodbye. The ache he'd felt then hadn't vanished. It had only buried itself deeper. It had been the first time he'd genuinely wanted to kill Devin, his infuriating, smug, impossibly obnoxious gay stepbrother. Thinking about the past still made his jaw tighten, but he'd moved on. That girl wasn't right for me. If she left just because of some weird misunderstanding and the delusion she had in her head, then it was never going to last. Leon shoved those dead, old feelings aside and focused. He thought about buying the book. Instantly, a translucent golden message appeared in front of him on the shimmering interface. Are you sure you want to use 100 causality to buy underscore self-biography of the great master Longstaff underscore rare book underscore? Yes, he answered in his mind. The moment his intent was confirmed, the balance in the upper corner of the interface changed. Causality, 288,900. A thick book glitched into existence before him. Much like the golden treasure chest had disappeared, reality bending, then snapping back. Leon caught the hefty tome before it could hit the ground. Just from the cover, featuring a naked woman with cat ears, he already understood the kind of journey he was in for. The title and author's name, underscore Master Longstaff, the endlessly accomplished underscore, had been a red flag, but the art? The art removed all doubt. He stared at the cover for a moment longer. It was his first time seeing a true Catwoman. Curiosity warred with second-hand embarrassment. Shaking his head, Leon walked to the carved mahogany study table, pulled out a plush cushion chair, and took a comfortable seat. But the moment his eyes drifted back to the sheer underscore thickness underscore of the book, something clicked in his mind. Why didn't I think of it earlier? He could materialize things inside his time dimension, if they were already stored in his soul-bound inventory, which meant he could read this inside. It wouldn't cost him any time at all. With a thought, he stored the book and immediately activated the dimensional hourglass. Or rather, its ability, he no longer needed the artifact itself. The world shimmered around him. In an instant, he was inside. The time dimension appeared once more, vast, silent, endless. Smooth stone ground stretched into a pale horizon, the air saturated with a sense of stillness. The book materialized in his hand the moment he thought of it. He took a seat on the warm, flat floor and opened it with cautious fingers. It had been a long time since he'd read anything for pleasure. Within minutes, his face turned red. He blushed, more than once. There were moments when his brows rose in shock, his eyes widened, his mouth even hung open. The contents were graphic, brazen, utterly shameless, but also fascinating. After 6 continuous hours of reading, Leon finally closed the book and let out a long breath. There was a hint of respect in his expression. Not because Lin Fong had reached the lesser divinity rank, practically an immortal with limitless lifespan. That wasn't what impressed Leon. It was the underscore way underscore he had done it. In the story, Lin Fong wasn't the most talented. Others were born with higher affinities, better backgrounds, stronger destinies. He never even tried to outpace them. He simply carved out a strange, unexpected path and stuck to it. Lin Fong had been born in the Ascendant Realm on a planet called Blue Star. His journey began when his fiancée broke off their engagement. He had failed to awaken an affinity, even at age 18. After being kicked out of his house, Lin Fong nearly died, saving a voluptuous woman from thugs. He expected gratitude. Instead, she fled, leaving him to fight alone. But in that moment, something triggered. He awakened a rank 5 illusion affinity. Not as impressive as the geniuses with rank 6 and multiple affinities, but rare enough. If used well, it could still make him strong. Strong enough to teach a few lessons, especially to his former fiancée. Lin Fong wasn't handsome, but he was decently above average. Since childhood, he had dreamed of building his own harem. Not one filled with impossibly beautiful genius women. Those were too much trouble, but with warm, loyal, quietly attractive girls who wouldn't drag him into chaos. During his class awakening trial, he received a unique S-ranked class, underscore illusionary playboy, underscore. And that was the start of it. He joined a sect to gain strength, made it into the inner circle, and there met the voluptuous library mistress, his first real teacher and his first true love. She taught him everything, not about cultivation, about sex, big breasts, a round ass as soft as sponge. She didn't go easy on him. Leon didn't even try to hide his expression at this point. The scenes were vivid, the writing a little too descriptive. According to the book, Lin Fong hadn't used tricks. Well, maybe a few. His class had its perks. But in the end, the library mistress spared him because, as she said, he had the biggest cock she had ever seen. And so began Lin Fong's unconventional journey. He stayed far from prodigies and entanglements, built a harem of curvy, cheerful women, and focused on safety, comfort, and longevity. They weren't the most talented girls, but they had soft personalities, big hearts, and, as the book kept emphasizing, amazing boobs and asses. That, apparently, had been enough. The sex scenes described in Lin Fong's autobiography weren't merely detailed. They were exhaustively vivid, confidently narrated, and meticulously instructional. Each page brimmed with explicit pointers on various techniques to please a woman. Emotional connection, pacing, rhythmic thrusts, intimate touches, and even spiritual synchronization during the climax. Leon had never encountered literature like this. Initially, he felt embarrassed, but soon he realized those weren't empty boasts. They sprang from genuine experience. He committed each technique to memory, knowing they represented valuable, perhaps even indispensable, knowledge that would benefit him someday. But Lin Fong's seemingly unstoppable luck eventually crashed spectacularly. Misfortune struck when he set his eyes on a particularly captivating elf woman in a tavern near the Divine Realms Adventurers Guild. Using illusions to enhance his already decent appearance, subtle charm spells, and unique class abilities that were intentionally only hinted at in the book, Lin Fong confidently approached his target. His 14 beautiful harem members observed from a nearby table, not only unbothered by his efforts, but actively supportive, eager to welcome another companion. Unfortunately, his target wasn't just any ordinary elf. She was secretly the heir to an influential and powerful elven clan, traveling incognito. She effortlessly pierced through his deceptive charms and illusions, identifying him immediately. Lin Fong didn't even manage to hold her hand or exchange flirtatious banter. Yet, that brief encounter ignited her fury, resulting in Lin Fong's name being added overnight to bounty lists circulated across every major realm. Wanted posters with his likeness appeared rapidly, spreading throughout taverns, guild halls, and city gates. He narrowly escaped the tavern alive, forced to activate one of his precious one-time use legendary ranked escape treasures, disappearing alongside his 14 loyal women amidst a flash of blinding magic. Lin Fong lost nearly everything: his accumulated wealth, his status, his dignity. But fortunately, his precious companions remained safe and intact. Since that fateful day, Lin Fong had retreated from the public eye entirely. His exact whereabouts became uncertain, shrouded in mystery. Rumors whispered he now hid somewhere within the vast expanse of the Ascendant Realm, or possibly in some obscure corner of the ethereal or even divine realms. His concluding paragraphs in the autobiography didn't carry regret or bitterness. Instead, they resonated like a joyful toast to a life thoroughly enjoyed. He proudly proclaimed, "No regrets. I'm living my best life hidden in paradise with 14 incredible women. I've reached lesser divinity, achieved the pinnacle of what I desire, and woke up every morning surrounded by softness and warmth. If this isn't a success, I don't know what is." Leon stared thoughtfully at the final passage. He found himself torn between amusement and genuine respect. Lin Fong was undeniably eccentric, perhaps even perverted by normal standards, but the man had principles. He lived unapologetically by his rules and managed to ascend to a level few could even dream of. This earned Lin Fong Leon's admiration. What caught Leon's attention more than anything, however, was Lin Fong's mention of having a rank 5 affinity. Leon had once assumed this was mediocre. After all, it was the same rank he had gained from the orb of all-elemental affinity, identical to the affinity rank of his respected master, Seraphine. Lin Fong's detailed explanations overturned this misconception entirely. Contrary to Leon's initial beliefs, even within the ethereal realm, a domain of prodigies, rank 5 was still considered well above average, qualifying someone as genuinely talented. The realization brought newfound respect and optimism for Seraphine's potential. Yet Leon knew Seraphine's class would inevitably limit her progress. And that's when the autobiography introduced the shocking and terrifying concept of class reawakening dungeons. These incredibly rare and lethal dungeons existed exclusively within the Ascendant realm and beyond. To enter one required an unimaginable sacrifice, renouncing all previous cultivation, achievements, and even one's existing class. The challenges within were 10 times deadlier than typical class awakening trials, carrying a horrific death rate of 99%. Survivors were never guaranteed improvements. You could end up with a class that was only slightly enhanced, completely different, or worse. Yet people risked everything on this slim chance. Lin Fong explained in great detail why he had ventured into these dungeons. 2 of his women suffered terribly poor talent. Only rank 4 affinities, barely average and doomed to shorter lifespans. Determined not to lose them prematurely, Lin Fong poured every resource at his disposal. Potions, elixirs, rare artifacts, fortune treasures, into their attempts at class reawakening. Miraculously, both women survived the deadly trials and emerged triumphantly with A-ranked classes. Lin Fong candidly acknowledged they might have secured S-rank classes had it not been for their weaker rank 4 affinities holding them back. Reading this section profoundly impacted Leon. Lin Fong's methods were undoubtedly questionable at times, but considering the harsh and ruthless nature of the higher realms, his actions felt justified and commendable. Lin Fong risked bankruptcy without hesitation, driven purely by loyalty and love for his companions. Leon paused, reflecting deeply. Such devotion and self-sacrifice were rare. Lin Fong wasn't merely a lecherous fool. He was a man capable. The autobiography further provided clear insights into affinity ranks. Rank 1 was lowest. Rank 8 was the peak. Throughout his life, Lin Fong encountered only one individual possessing a rank 7 affinity, the very same elf woman from the tavern incident. She belonged to the prestigious Dark Elf clan and wielded a terrifying power even without reaching the divine realm. Despite being 2 ranks lower than Lin Fong, her aura alone made him tremble in fear. Instantly recognizing the overwhelming threat, Lin Fong didn't attempt bravado or fight. He immediately activated his most valuable legendary ranked escape artifact, vanishing instantly from the scene. In his writings, Lin Fong humorously praised himself for acting quickly and avoiding the fate of foolish cultivators who underestimated opponents simply due to lower cultivation ranks. Leon smirked knowingly at this anecdote. Lin Fong was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. Lastly, Lin Fong's book detailed a comprehensive cultivation hierarchy: apprentice, journeyman, master, ascendant, sage, archon, ethereal initiate, ethereal lord, ethereal sovereign, lesser divinity, greater divinity, prime divinity. From these ranks, Leon deduced the Dark Elf clan heir who terrified Lin Fong was likely at the ethereal lord stage, significantly lower than Lin Fong's lesser divinity, yet immensely powerful. Moreover, Leon learned how cultivation was structured within each realm. Ascendant realm housed cultivators from apprentice to archon. Ethereal realm contained those from apprentice to ethereal sovereign. Divine realm ranged from apprentice to prime divinity. Lower-ranked cultivators existed within higher realms, but only up to certain limits. No archon in earthly realm, no sovereign in ascendant, and no prime divinity in ethereal realm. This meant Leon's current earthly realm's highest attainable cultivation level was master rank. Only apprentice, journeyman, and master ranks existed here. The gravity of this revelation settled heavily upon him. Leon realized, perhaps for the first time, how truly small and insignificant he currently was. Yet alongside this sobering realization came excitement. He now understood the vastness and potential of his cultivation journey, one that stretched far beyond what he previously imagined. Leon closed the book gently, determination lighting his eyes. The stairs before him stretched infinitely upward, and he was ready to climb. There was also the mention of the level limit increased at different ranks. You had to start from level 1 in each rank. This part wasn't mentioned properly because most of the book consisted of sexual scenes and endeavors of Lin Fong about how he got new women. Previously, when he had checked the status screen of his master, which he didn't know he wasn't supposed to do, he now understood the reason behind it. According to Lin Fong's journey, there were 3 types of systems. First, the lesser system for those below Ascendant rank. After reaching Ascendant rank, the system would get upgraded and reach the Ascendant system. Finally, after reaching the lesser divine rank, which meant becoming an immortal godlike existence to those below you, you would get another upgrade, a cosmic system. It also told about a realm, which was 1 rank higher than Prime Divinity. In other words, a realm above the divine realm. It was known only to those who had access to the cosmic system, because of the special features like chat and shop, as there were entities even more powerful than them in those chats. Prime Divinity were only ants in front of them. Leon had some guesses, but knowing this had broadened his horizons. But for now, he didn't focus on this anymore and recalled the important info that he didn't understand at first. Concept. It was also the same thing that had piqued his interest when he had seen it on the information tab of Seraphine. She had a level 1 lightning aura. Concepts were divided into 3 stages. Form 1, aura, for levels. Form 2, embodiment, 3 levels. Form 3, domain, 3 levels. These concepts were the things that held back most of the people in their cultivation journey. Lin Fong mentioned the only reason he was able to become a lesser divinity was because he was able to master a domain in a secret realm which was only level 1, which enhanced his comprehension capability. That could only be called a stroke of million-year luck. He mentioned that even if you consumed hundreds of thousands of monster cores to reach the next ranks, you wouldn't be able to, as these concepts were the things that separated geniuses with high comprehension ability, because of either their bloodline, special physique, or high affinity rank from normal folks. Lin Fong explained how grandiose the thing concept was and how strong it could make a person. He even said that crossing the difference in level of concept in fighting was like facing a huge wall. No matter how much you tried, you couldn't break it. The idea of the concept fascinated Leon, and it also made him see Seraphine in new light now. He had thought with his amount of mana he could defeat her, but now he wasn't too sure about it. Leon came out of his time dimension and stored the books inside his inventory. After that, he thanked Lin Fong in his heart, as the information he had gotten from this book was priceless along with his other questionable things and techniques about pleasure. That was money well spent. I think I know more about this universe now than ever, Leon contemplated. Now Leon opened the next section, the Cosmic Chat. Its name alone gave him ideas of what he should expect from it. He was excited to see the chat between powerful entities who might be sharing secrets of the universe. He was too excited, so he opened the chat. A message popped up in front of him. Please choose a name for yourself before entering the chat. Leon thought for a while, and he decided that he would use the name of his class, as he knew from before that everyone's identities were safe in the cosmic system. So he thought the name Elemental Paragon in his mind as a message popped up once again. Are you sure you want to set your username as Elemental Paragon? Once selected, you will not be able to change your username unless you break through a rank in your cultivation. Leon didn't see any problem in this, as it felt lenient, because in the future he could change his username if he wanted. However, he understood one thing. For normal people who got the cosmic system in the divine realm after entering the ranks of lesser divinity, it meant once they decided on their username, they couldn't change it for thousands of years. That also explained why most of the people had weird nicknames when he was scrolling through the shop. It might be for trying to keep their identity hidden so no trouble came their way. Leon didn't think he had to worry about that, as he was in a realm so below that no one could ever even guess that someone with a cosmic system would be in there. He still didn't understand properly why he had access to the cosmic system. But one thing was clear. It must be due to merging with the orb of all elemental affinity. Yes. After choosing yes for his username, a new message popped up. Welcome user Elemental Paragon into Cosmic Chat. Cosmic Chat, thread number 117. Topic: The artifact that screams at night. Mode: Private. Participants at Glasstooth Nomad, at Librarian of Wounds, at Velcron Emitter. Cosmic Chat, thread number 129. Topic: How to store a star without breaking causality. Mode: Private. Participants at Ink Sleep Softly, at VaultNanny.exe, at Time Loop Gambler. Cosmic Chat, thread number 166. Topic: Romantic problems with eldritch entities. Mode: Private. Participants at Bleeds in Sonatas, at Hearts Eaten Softly, at Mirror Keeps Secrets. Cosmic Chat, thread number 173. Topic: Forbidden cultivation recipes, definitely illegal. Mode: Private. Participants at Pansoup Oracle, at Scalding Ink Chef, at Wormwood Sommelier. Cosmic Chat, thread number 204. Topic: Please stop resurrecting me. Mode: Private. Participants at Dust Cycle Refund, at Respawn Tax Agent, at Coffin as Wi-Fi. Cosmic Chat, thread number 222. Topic: Ranking dungeon bosses by dateability. Mode: Private. Participants at Lich and Let Cry, at Blush of the Beholder, at Swiper. Leon looked at the different threads, but all of them were private. He couldn't join them and see what the people were talking about inside. He scrolled for a while trying to find if there were any chats that weren't private. He found one. There was a search bar at the left corner too, but he had no idea what to search for, so he only scrolled. Underscore. Cosmic Chat, thread number 145. Topic: Alira's new concert. Mode: Public. Underscore. After finding the chat, he opened it, and the name of the topic was Alira's new concert. I don't know, there are things like concerts in this magical world. Underscore. Limb Dealer. Why is every show sold out? The arena is floating in the sky. Ember's still alive. Because it's Alira. She shows up, sparkles, sings one sad song, and people lose their minds. Bone Collector 69. I died during the second song. Not even mad. Moon Who Eats Herself. You always die. Get a better body already. Mirror Junkie. She hit that high note and cracked all 7 of my mirrors. I'm keeping the cracks. They look nice. Causality Tax Department. Her voice made a group of elders younger. They're toddlers now. One bit me. Vortex Guy. Okay, but was she singing live? Ember's still alive. Don't start that again. Her fan club will set your realm on fire. Limb Dealer. I still forget she's just a lesser divinity. She acts like she rules the whole divine realm. Moon Who Eats Herself. That's the brand. She sells illusions and good lighting. Bone Collector 69. Some guy exploded just clapping too hard. I saw it. Very shiny way to go. Sparkles. Mirror Junkie. Does she even sing? Or just stand there glowing while everyone screams? User Divine Echo _ Lira joined thread. Divine Echo _ Lira. New song next week, Sparkles. It's called Love Me after the collapse kiss mark. And no, the sparkles aren't for sale nail polish. Ember's still alive. A star, she's here. Be cool. Moon Who Eats Herself. You cried last time she waved. Limb Dealer. I'm not gonna lie. I'm buying 3 posters this time. Leon read the chat for a while, and it looked like a bunch of high schoolers talking about their favorite idol. He couldn't lie. He was disappointed and found it amusing how immortal beings talked like fans. He closed the chat as he didn't think he had anything interesting to see here, especially when most of the chats were private. Quite a few topics in the description of the chat were interesting, but he had no way to join them, so he stopped for now. Now that he had found everything about his cosmic system and learned valuable information due to the help of the book he bought, he focused on the most important task. He had killed so many monsters inside the dungeon, but hadn't absorbed a single core. He was excited to level up and become stronger. There were skill runes, too, that he had to learn. Let's get started, he murmured with excitement. With just a thought, he took out a core from his inventory, the core of one of the blue electric wolves. Holding the blue mana core in his hand, he could feel the mana radiating from it. He started by trying to absorb mana from the core. The mana moved inside his body, and it didn't even take a second before the stone dispersed and was absorbed by him. Leon felt the change and a feeling of euphoria when he absorbed the core, but no message of leveling up appeared from the system. He took out the biggest core, the red and blackish core he had gotten from the throne monster. He could feel the amount of mana inside this core was hundreds of times higher than the previous one. Without a second thought, he started absorbing the core like before. It only took him a few seconds before his body devoured the mana core like a black hole. While absorbing the core, not just one but 3 messages popped up before his eyes. You have reached level 2. You have reached level 3. You have reached level 4. The messages weren't the only thing that came. He also felt that his strength had increased along with the mana reserve in his core. He felt like he could do anything right now. He opened the status screen with curiosity to see how much stronger he had become. Character information. Name, Leon. Level 4. Class. Elemental Paragon, SSS. Age, 10. Soul age, 26. Race, human. Cultivation, apprentice rank. Affinity, all, rank 7. Strength, 23. Agility, 24. Stamina, 24. Mana, 1150. Intelligence, 130. Skills, none. Technique, mana body enhancement, adept rank. First and foremost, seeing his rank 7 affinity with every element, a smile appeared on his face. He had forgotten that his passive ability was being used. Even in the divine realm, people with rank 7 affinity are considered geniuses. So me with rank 7 affinity with every element, how overpowered might that be considered? Leon couldn't help but feel like he had hit the jackpot in the spin with that entity. Even more important was his own class, which had one passive ability to increase the rank of all his affinities. He didn't even feel a thing as his passive ability was active all the time, other than the fact he felt much closer to every element. His connection felt stronger than before. He could see his strength had become 23, an increase of 15 stats, making his raw strength 3 times as strong as before. The same could be said for his agility and stamina. Both had increased by 15 stats. This meant 5 stat increases with every level up. He remembered the strength stat of his beautiful master. It was 28 at level 10, which meant her strength increased by about 2 every rank. He understood how overpowered his class was even more now. He was close to her stats at level 4 only. This was especially impressive when he didn't even think his class's main focus was stats like strength, stamina, and agility. He then looked at his mana, which had a massive increase of 150, meaning a 50 mana increase with every level up. Holy shit, 150 mana was more than how much total his master even had. And lastly, he looked at his intelligence stat, which was the lowest stat in his master's information. This meant it might be quite hard to improve. It had also made a big jump of 30 stats. This meant 10 stat increases with every level up. He knew that stat was important. He had realized one thing. He felt like if he tried to cast the same spell, he would be able to do it more easily. He had a feeling about this, and also his memory had become sharp. He still remembered every little detail from the time he had merged with the orb. He still remembered which turn he had taken to reach the boss. He even remembered that he had killed 34 small blue wolves, 39 small red wolves, 5 big red, and 7 big blue. He even remembered which area he hit to finish them off. His memory had reached another level. He remembered word-for-word conversations with his master. It might be presumptuous, but he felt he could plagiarize the book written by Lin Fong without even looking at it. The content was etched in his memory. I had become a human computer. He had a high desire to go to his time realm and see how strong he had become. At the same time, he wanted to practice a bit so he would be able to control his strength. But he held off his excitement, as he had more cores to absorb along with skill runes. Only then would he enter his seclusion to train his strength and try to learn concepts that his master had. Lin Fong said only one thing about it, that they were trying to learn the truth of the element. He didn't understand right now, but he hoped soon he would also have at least level 1 aura like his master. Only then would he be able to call himself her equal. If Seraphine was here to see his new strength, even now, she would have been shocked to her core. His thoughts about trying to learn level 1 aura, which was her secret, She would have fainted in all honesty. Leon took out all the cores at the same time, along with the boss monster core, which was around the same size as the throne monster core, but with a faint color difference. He could feel the mana in this core was quite less than the previous core. He floated all cores using his wind magic, as he didn't think he could hold them at the same time. He didn't want to waste time absorbing one by one, and it only took him about a few seconds before they got absorbed, so he thought why not do it all at the same time? There were more than 100 mana cores floating in the air around him using his magic. 1 boss wolf core, 12 bigger elemental wolf cores, 73 small elemental wolf cores, and lastly 24 non-elemental small wolf cores.